We're rolling.
All right.
This is a true honor. We got Jon Andersen in the house today.
Yes, we do.
He's looking rather small, isn't he, Nsima?
Kind of tiny. Not as big as I expected.
The shoulders, I think, are pretty small, and the traps.
The traps are the smallest.
Well, here's the thing, fellas. I'm 49 years old. You know, there's a lot of time passed since I was original on this
So
show.
we're starting out with excuses.
No, what I'm saying is that at 49 years old, it's actually, I've noticed it's actually tougher to keep size on.
What do you weigh nowadays?
You know, we were just talking about it before we started. You know, my weight bounces right now between 85 and 95, but most of the time more towards 85, to be honest. You know, it wasn't but just 5 years ago where I used to get pretty bent out of shape if I wasn't 300 pounds. But as you get older, you start to realize it's just a number and become a little more comfortable in your own skin and realize, okay, I'm going to be fine at 285.
And for you, it's really, really important that you're fueling yourself all the time, right?
I eat constantly, as I had to turn off my alarms before we started, because you have to eat you're eating on a schedule. A lot of times not because you're hungry. You're eating because it's time. You're eating because it's what you need. It's like, you know, you take your car to the car wash when it's really, really dirty. It doesn't get clean, right? You take your car wash every week. You maintain it. That's how you get that car that is always top notch. Well, your body, you got to take care of it, but it's all day long.
Something we'll dive into deep in the show, but you talk a lot about like pushing off hunger with meals, and you know, for us, it's a matter of sometimes, or for a lot of people, it's a matter of convenience. Sometimes people skip meals. They get hungry. There's a lot of people utilizing intermittent fasting, which can be a great strategy, but you can get yourself too hungry. And I think a lot of times it boils down to convenience. And so for us, we're very fortunate to be sponsored by Eat Right Foods. They got some great products. The turkey is probably my favorite. I like the honey steak one is really good too.
Steak is
making me hungry.
Good.
But it's and I know for yourself, you're probably carrying around some food with you. It's important. It's an important factor. Like if we don't have that convenient, high protein food, even as dedicated as we are, we're gonna have cravings and we're gonna probably fail.
100%. I mean, my wife will be, you know, she's not a morning person, so she's going to be strolling in here probably in a little while with a bag of food, because wherever we go, we've got to have food handy. I mean, I knew being here there would be options, but you never count on that.
We have a delivery coming of Eat Right Food, so you can try it out today and let us know what you think.
Well, ground turkey is one of my favorites. So
I can't wait. He's gonna fucking like this.
Wait till you try this.
But here's the question: does this sponsored company do they mix peanut butter powder for you in your ground turkey? That's what I want to know.
They probably will if we ask them.
So ground turkey, a little peanut butter powder, a little Splenda, some sugar-free maple syrup, and then if you really want to get spicy, you put some almonds over the top for the crunch.
So I have everything.
Now we're talking, baby.
Except for the kid still.
Except for the almonds, I have everything right there. I have the peanut butter powder. I have the stevia. I have the what else? You said the peanut butter powder. So I have
peanut butter powder.
You
put this in turkey?
there.
Mix it in the turkey. Oh yeah.
I'm down.
I have to try this.
That's it.
I'm telling you.
I'm telling you.
Wow.
See,
this is different than watermelon and mustard.
see, I got it there. You know, I came from as a little fat kid. That little son of a bitch talks to me every day. He calls me, says, "Listen, you better feed me something sweet, or I'm going to tell you to do something you don't want to hear me to tell you to do."
More chocolate syrup, John.
That's
more
it.
chocolate syrup.
I'm telling you, I still take my shirt off in front of the mirror, and sometimes I look and, you know, I see the little fat guy, you know, so I just got to keep him quiet. I keep the fat guy on the other side of the mirror by crazy concoctions like we just talked about.
I like it.
Well, if you guys want to keep the fat guy on the other side of the mirror, tell them how they can get hooked up, Andrew.
Sure thing. That's at eatrightfoods.com. That's eatrightfoods.com. Now, pay attention. It's a little bit tricky, but for your first order, use promo code PowerProject25 for 25% off your order. And we're not going to leave you hanging, because I know how sometimes it feels like, oh, you're going to give me a discount on the first order, then I'm on my own after that. Nope. After that, use promo code PowerProject for 10% off everything. And again, we highly recommend the Southwest Turkey Bowl. That shit is incredible. But yeah, head up eatrightfoods.com now.
It's kind of hard for John to even keep like his elbows on the table because his shoulders are so wide that he's like stuck in here like this. Problematic being this big, huh?
you know, when you were moving your elbows in, it reminded me of a time where I was working out with a buddy of mine. He was a submission grappler, right? And so I was just doing it for fun, for kind of cross training, you know. And he said, "Hey, let's put the gloves on. Let's go in the cage. You know, you'll just kind of spar a little bit, you know." And so because I can't
You can
close
get hit
my
in the body all day long.
I'm here, and he was just boom right between. Because it was almost like he said it was like my arms just made like this perfect funnel. He'd throw a punch and just find its way right to my nose. So yeah, so the elbows not coming together has caused me multiple problems in multiple parts of my life.
Wow. You did some grappling for a while, didn't you?
I did. You know, when I retired from strongman, I went into wrestling. That's when we actually first connected.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually Jesse Burdick came down to my training place, and that's when he mentioned you. And
we were shopping for the same pair of tights, and one thing led to another.
That's right. Next thing you know, we're having a tug of war over the spandex pink tights. You know.
Well, how old were you guys at this point? I need a timeline.
This would have been, I retired from strongman in 06 or 07, so it would have been right in there. And yeah, so anyway, so that was when I started doing my Japan thing. Well, they and oftentimes will put you in, they'll, you know, ask you if you want to go in and do like a real fight. They call it, it's basically what a shoot, but when it comes down to it, you never quite know what you're going to get put up against. And sometimes over there, some of those matches turn.
I never even thought about it till just now, but he would make a lot of money doing that, huh?
Huge. Yeah.
Why?
Huge.
Wait, what?
It's the Japanese. They're like,
yeah,
they're enthralled by Americans. Like they're
and
just
then
like,
the big muscled Americans.
Yeah,
you know, yeah. And so basically, I started kind of doing some more like real training on top of my wrestling training, because sometimes these, even in a regular, you know, over there in a regular wrestling match, predetermined, you know what's happening. You know, sometimes somebody gets pissed off and it gets sticky in there. So you got to be ready to defend yourself, you know? And so that was where my, I guess you'd say it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, submission grappling, a little bit of striking came in. I was, you know, not terribly good at any of it, largely because flexibility is a huge part of that world. But I wasn't a very good pro wrestler either. I just looked good. You know, they liked the way I looked, and they knew I would put butts in the seats if I flexed my muscles.
Some of the people you grappled with, though, were pretty high level, like the gyms you went to, right? Didn't you go to some of those?
Yeah. David Terrell, he was actually, he was back in UFCs when like 50s, you know? And, you know, here's a dude, I mean, he was like surprisingly explosive and strong. You look at him and he's a fairly big guy, but you have no idea what you're up against once he grabs a hold of you. And so, yeah, he was, you know, I ended up working with some pretty good guys, largely because they wanted to train with me as I was big. I was different. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's like when you're a young man and you go in the bar and you see some girl that you've never seen something like that before, so you got to try it, you know? So I was like that. I was like that guy in their gym. Well, they've never seen somebody like me, so they got to come give me a ride, you know? I was the scooter, you know?
You have to use that term,
I was the scooter, you know? You know, the scooter, you know, it's the scooter's the chick that you want to ride, but you don't want your friends seeing you ride.
I knew this was going to be fun.
Well, let's be honest. Come on now.
Doing with that little scooter, Jesus Christ.
Come on. I mean, let's we've all been there, you know? Come on now. You know, whether it was by accident or on purpose. I mean, don't tell me it's not the same for that too. Don't tell me it's not the same for females.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've been discarded like a dirty dish towel a few times and realized that I was a scooter. You know, they weren't bringing me home to mom. They just wanted to have a quick ride.
It's okay to admit
it's okay. That's it.
That's happened to us. Yeah.
You move on. You move
That's
on.
it.
Move on.
But reality is reality, you know?
I'm getting flashbacks. I remember some.
When you did mess around with some grappling, were you good enough at it at least to have some transfer of your strength? Like, because being a strongman competitor and being a high level a professional strongman competitor, were some of the people that would try to, you know, put you in different holds and stuff? Were they like,
well, that was part of what
they couldn't figure it out, or
that was part of really what was exciting to them was there were certain things that wouldn't work. You know, they couldn't, I wasn't flexible enough for them to actually use certain moves, because like, you know, my arm only goes so far back, only goes here. So they were always like, they'd hook something in and it just they couldn't lock it up or whatever they were doing, you know. So it was kind of like, you know, it was like I guess you would say I had a very, very small move set, but they're very deep move set. You know, they had tons of moves. A lot of them wouldn't work, and I think that was part of it. They had to learn to modify what they were doing, and in that world, that's what your opponent. You're problem solving. How do I deal with the problems this person creates for me? And so, you know, they weren't worried about me beating them, of course, but how do they make these moves that don't seem to want to lock up work? So.
Well, I'm curious, in the fights that you did, if you did win any fights, how's that?
No, I never fought.
Oh, you never fought?
I wrestled.
You
was
wrestled?
Predetermined.
Gotcha.
Meaning, you know, I give you one, you give me one, I'm going to send you the ropes, duck my clothesline, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know? But keep in mind, in those matches in Japan, sometimes people get pissed off, so it would get a little real. So that's why I trained, because you got to kind of be ready to, you know, to deal.
The Japanese wrestlers will actually like hit you like pretty fucking hard.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, don't know what to do. You're like,
Do I hit you back? Like,
well, yeah, you're not sure if it was like by accident, but then they do it again, and you're like, I think I don't have any other choice than to just level the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
And then you do that a couple times, and then they're like happy.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay,
no,
this
check
is
this
kinda the
out.
way it is.
Because for them, I mean, they truly are warriors. I mean, their job is to please that crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this. There was a match. Or here we go. Look at some of this is actually. So that right there is actually like a local show that I did in between tours because I needed to get the ring rust off.
Yeah.
Because you can't show up. I mean, keep in mind, I didn't have very much experience. So I would go to these little shows like this in the States to basically tune up my skills. So when I got in the ring in Japan, I wouldn't fuck anything up.
Was it you versus these two guys?
Yeah, but it's just, keep in mind, it's just a big
I
joke.
I know. It's funny.
You know? But yeah, I mean, this is actually like an indie. This would be considered an indie match. This indie company was pretty good. I mean, have you seen? You can see indie company got 30 people in a
Warehouse, yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things about my career in wrestling. I had like 5 or 6 gymnasium matches before I got contracted in Japan, which really fucking pissed a lot of people off because, you know, I show up there, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I was in there doing this stuff, running around, yelling, flexing my muscles, and that was enough. Yeah. You know, but so here's a kind of a funny story. So I was actually put into, it was a work shoot, right? So it was actually Antonio Inoki. He was the one who started in Japan, but then he left and he started a spin-off company. And so that was the job I had first. It was called IGF. So basically, keep in mind, I've been kind of getting myself ready to be over there, not knowing if it's going to turn a little nasty in the ring. Well, one of my third matches, I was in the ring with Josh Barnett. Okay, I don't give a shit if you've been preparing or not. Josh Barnett will turn you upside down. And we're buddies, so it wasn't like, you know, we had mutual friends. Like one of his really good friends was a strongman that I knew. So we had an instant kinship. Cool guy. We're talking about a smart dude. I'm telling you, that's the smartest badass on the planet right there. But anyway, so, and it was all scripted out, you know, and he's actually telling me, look, I'm going to do this, be ready, you know, and he put a knee in my gut. Oh my God. Folded me up like a little bitch. You know, it was all I could do. It was all I could do to get through the rest of the goddamn match. I mean, I was just, you know, I mean, and I knew it was coming. But he's just so good at what he does. He put that thing right on my solar plex. And it was like, oh, yeah. And he was like, I didn't even throw it very hard.
You're like,
It didn't feel that way on my side. So anyway, but yeah, that was a fun time over there. It was a lot of fun, you know, walking out, you know, in front of just an enormous amount of people at the Tokyo Dome was definitely that was pretty amazing. And then, of course, my name was Strongman, as you saw in the back of my drawers in that little clip there. So I had to lift Giant Bernard, who's 6'8", 370 pounds, over my head, press him. Shit. Yeah. In a Tokyo Dome match. I'm thinking to myself, okay, your spot is about 90 seconds, and it's made or break. If you don't lock this guy out, there's no more strongman. I can pretty much guarantee you're not going to get renewed. So it was so, you know, some of those moments, it's like that big squat, that big deadlift that you don't quite know. You're so prepared, but it's got to go your way.
That's
And
where doing some log presses probably came in handy.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, literally I mean, some of my strongman background is what made it possible because it was, I mean, and the best part was, I was telling him, because we're in the back, we're talking about it's going to go down. I said, all right. His real name is Matt Bloom. So, all right, Matt, neck and nuts. That's where I'm going. He said, what do you mean?
Oh, shit.
I said, I'm going to grab your neck and I'm going to grab your nuts. And I got him up there and I got him in it. I didn't have a very good grip on his nuts. I had a hold of something, but it was primarily thumb, and then these hands right here, I was digging, trying to hold on to something. I think I had some scrotum because there wasn't much to hold on to. And he was squirming around up there like a fish out of the water.
I must have not felt so good.
Yeah.
Probably oil checked his ass.
Let's kind of back things up to you as a kid and kind of how all this started, how your lifting career even started.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a fat little boy. I wish I had...
How fat? Like fat, or just like chubby?
I mean, chubby, but to the point where, I mean, you can't call me obese, but I was fat enough that, my boobs had a nice little fold to them. But, keep in mind, part of anybody who's been overweight understands that it's how you look is one thing, but the worst part of the process is that you keep inflicting this same behavior pattern on yourself. And so really it's a self-esteem destroyer. Because
how old were you when you maybe recognized like, oh man, I'm different than some of the other kids?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there was a summer where I injured my ankle and I had to spend most of the summer in a cast. And that's when not a lot of activity and a lot of food. And I showed up to junior high, going from middle school, being a little husky and a little overweight, but it's a little easier at that age because, they're all still kids. Now you get into middle school and everything changes. The social hierarchy is much more intense. Just the whole, I mean, we all know what it's like to be a kid. Yeah. And you think it's the worst thing on the planet. When you get older, you realize every kid goes through it to some extent. But that was when I got heavy. And I just remember showing up to school, not quite realizing that I was going to be perceived differently. All of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm starting to realize, shit, they're talking about me. Like, oh no, and of course I was a, comfort eater. So if something bothered me, I just go eat. So it just made it get worse and worse. And then I wrestled, right? So it was weight category, and I was not a terribly good athlete. So I'm fat and I'm not a good athlete. I was just getting rolled up like a little bit. So I just started starving myself. I'd eat one orange for the day, which is terrible. But as a kid, you don't know any better. And then of course, you get skinny fat. You're weak.
So you lost some weight.
Exactly.
But
you actually feel better because you've lost some weight, even though you don't look terribly better. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's kind of where the whole thing started, was just, once the social pressures start to get to you, that's where it kind of spun for me. And then it went all the way until I was a senior in high school. A senior in high school is because I was a really late bloomer. So, I mean, I'm really late. So freshman year of high school, you got the freshman team, the JV team and the varsity team all climbing into the shower. And these are the days when the coach says, everybody takes a shower, you got to run tomorrow. And again, in junior high, not everybody had hair in their nuts yet. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm covered here. Why climb in the shower? There's 150 some kids in there.
Yeah.
And I'm the only dude in there with a single hair in his cock. Now, so you're heavy, you're way underdeveloped. You have it was light years away from puberty. And so, this was like, I could remember just the burning feeling. Yeah. I mean, you're burning. Couldn't you say you're either burning or freezing, but the sensation is so intense. And, we're talking about, it was very traumatic. I remember learning to tell that story later in life was very cleansing for me. But ultimately, this was the kind of stuff that I went through as a kid. And, but I remember even during all of this earlier on I remember seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger for the first time. I mean, he's inspired so many people. It's amazing. And I just, all of a sudden, it was like something in my chest changed. I couldn't tell you what it was. I didn't know what was happening, but I was like, I was forever different after. It was Conan the Barbarian. And at that point, it was like, you know, I was still looking for the answers in the bottom of the cookie jar. So don't get me wrong. It didn't change my eating habits. But I knew at that point that that's what I wanted to do. I want to be a big, strong guy. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. But the inspiration had been set. The drive was there. And so ultimately, that's kind of where the start was. And I started, I would, you know, you get a set of dumbbells and you train a little bit and then you don't. But anyway, then ultimately when I found hard work and everything started to slowly change, you know.
What was the first sport that you really got into as far as lifting was concerned? Because I'm imagining that in high school, you weren't lifting that much, right?
You know, funny enough, even though I was, you know, an overweight, underdeveloped kid, as, you know, I was actually the second person in my junior class. I was still fat to squat 405 in high school, which was pretty fucking good, you know?
Yeah, that's really good.
And so anyway, that kind of, then I started to realize, okay, maybe there is something here. You know, maybe this is not just a straight pipe dream, you know? And so that was when, so the training really started kicking in there. And then right about the end of my junior year, I really started to actually hit puberty to the point where I started to, you know, I grew, you know, I can't say that I got thin, but everything stretched out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of where the whole thing started. So then I just became, I realized very quickly I was far better at lifting weights than the sports I was playing. And so that's where the love for lifting weights really just took off, you know?
Yeah.
What was the switch with the nutrition, and how did that happen?
That's an interesting tale there. So,
because even when you were doing strongman, I remember you were eating very unconventionally, and you looked unconventional. All the other strongmen were 6'5", 6'6", and just looked a lot different than you. I mean, you were jacked and lean, and it was pretty rare at the time to see that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing that I can say for myself, even as a young guy with no self-esteem, is I was always pretty happy to kind of find my own way. Probably because I didn't really feel comfortable in line, so to speak. I wasn't feel like I was very accepted, so I was happier to find my own way rather than to get in line with people that were kind of following the status quo. So I remember, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how do I build muscle, and I'm doing you know, back in those days there was no internet, there was no way to find information, and so you'd see the commercials, you know, see bread, eat bread, you know, and so I'm thinking to myself, shit, I'm gonna eat bread. So I'm eating loaves of wheat bread, like loaves. You know, I'm showing up my senior year of high school. I finally started getting a little bit of, you know, I'm a little bit more socially accepted, you know. Sorry, look at the screen. So that's some of the stuff in actually when I was doing wrestling in Mexico. But anyway, so long and short, I'm just pumping down wheat bread, thinking that's the key. Now we know that was probably just making me fatter. But one day, my mom runs out of bread. She's buying loaves. She said, well, there's not. They were out at the store. I'm like, well, son of a bitch, what am I going to eat? So they had all these cans of tuna. So I started eating tuna because I was in this mode while I was eating bread. Well, what am I getting? Okay, well, there's tuna. So I started eating tuna. In about 3 days, I was like, something is different. I mean, I noticed in the gym, I was like, that was a lot. And this is the day where I'm training chest every other day, you know? And so I was like, it's Wednesday. And this was much easier Wednesday than it was Monday. And I started eating tuna on Tuesday. And I was like, okay. So I just kept eating tuna. And then I started to realize, okay, tuna really represented protein. At that point, I couldn't have told you. I thought that wheat bread was protein. So I stumbled across protein. That was, next thing you know, since then, I've been eating 4, when I say 4, that was back in the day. Now it's more like 6 or 7 pounds of flesh a day, you know?
Yeah, let's phrase it that way.
Well, flesh kind of caps. We're not talking about bar stories here anymore, brother. We're talking about diet, you know? But ultimately, it was kind of like, you know, because when I say flesh, it really encapsulates, you know, an animal flesh, an animal product, if you will. Like even eggs fit in that, which is not really flesh, but that's when I started to realize, holy shit. And so I started just really put everything I've done, even from the time I was little insecure fat boy, was extreme. That was something I had in me from the beginning. And so I would, and then also I realized as well is that I could also eat, I could overeat, which was a huge part of my youth, and I wasn't getting fatter.
Let's explain that a little bit. You can overeat protein?
Well, you're talking about a guy who would, have a problem at school and would eat until I couldn't breathe. It was like a comfort thing. And so when I started to lift weights and I started to realize that the protein was helping, I would just overeat protein, right? So I was overeating no matter what. But when I was overeating protein, I was actually getting benefits. Now, granted, if I wasn't overeating, I was just eating lots of protein, the benefits would have been greater. So I'm not suggesting that overeating protein is the thing to do, but overeating protein versus overeating wheat bread, there was a substantial step forward.
One thing to overeat on it would be protein.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's where, I mean, that was kind of the birth of my deep water philosophy in terms of how I eat. I mean, deep water is really a philosophy of the mind, but the eating practices are high protein.
Deep water. Okay, good segue to deep water. Now we got to explain how this deep water term came to be for you.
Well, so as if you kind of parlay what we're doing, everything's been extreme, and I'm doing a lot of stuff because it's like it's making me feel better about myself, and this is the first time in my life that I've ever had anything like this. I've never ever felt like I'm. What I'm doing is actually building my self-esteem, and it was quite addicting too. I mean, I was really, really all over it. So this is where I just realized that, okay, I'm going to just be extreme with my eating protein. I'll be extreme with my training. And so, this is where some of the crazy things that I've done with training were born, largely because I wasn't following the status quo. I wasn't doing 5 sets of 5. And so I would do things like, put 405 on a squat bar, and how many times can you squat it? Well, we're talking like 1992. Nobody's ever heard of that shit. So I'm going into a gym. I just show up to a Gold's gym. Nobody would know me. Load up 405 and just nap. In those days, hitting that thing for 15, 16 times was a lot. Down the road, I ended up doing it for the mid 40s. But at that point, I'm a pro strongman, and a lot had changed. But that was kind of where the birth of deep water came. Now the name is kind of, we got to go forward about 10 years. So in my strongman career, you had to be good at a lot. You had to be a good deadlifter. You had to be a good squatter. You had to be able to lift in stones, and you also had to have an Olympic strategy too. You couldn't just go in there and not have any Olympic experience and do well in some of his events. So one of my buddies, his name's Joshua Fay, still one of my dearest friends. He was actually a really accomplished Olympic lifter. And so I said, hey, Josh, I need you to train me in this stuff. So every Thursday I would get together with him and we would train Olympic stuff. And, he was always used to doing triples and singles. That's just the Olympic way. And I'm like, no, I'm going to put 3 plates on and I'm just going to go until I can't go anymore. He's like, what? So yeah, this is the way we do it.
Who the fuck wants to do that?
Yeah. And so as he would basically coach me as my former breakdown, he would be coaching me. And so what we realized is I would get to a certain point where I'm fatigued. That's where the coaching really came in. And so he would basically, his cue to me is, okay, we're in deep water. Now start listening. Meaning, okay, you're eating shit, form's breaking down, open your ears. And that's where deep water came from. So it was basically people would come and, by that time, my training had been so aggressive. People were kind of coming to check it out. Like Jesse Burdick had come down. And so, again, people are just like, what is this guy doing?
People were coming from all over, like different areas of California and probably even further. But I heard a lot of stories. That's how I learned about you. I heard like rumors and shit of people saying like
It was like a myth.
Yeah, no, well, there's the Lancashire stairs, right?
Yep.
There's these famous stairs, and people are like, there's a strongman dude that runs past all these fit females and all these CrossFit guys that are running up and down these stairs, and he runs past them and he's like, and he can barely run, but he's fucking cruising on past them, and he's like wearing a weighted vest or whatever. I was like, I gotta meet this. Who is this fucking guy?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I remember hearing another story about how and who knows if the fuck's true or whatever, but like I guess you were waiting on some other guys to show up, and you just started doing like rear delts, like on like a pec deck, and you just, they were saying that you did the whole stack, and you must have did like 100 sets or something, waiting for somebody.
Yeah,
and as they showed up, you were like, "Hey, you guys got to do that before we, before we get to this."
Because when you show up to train, it's like, okay, we're here to get better. You can get better in so many ways, and so for whatever reason, I picked that for the day. And so that, ultimately, but that was kind of the whole thing when it was time
like,
to
we
train.
didn't know what was happening. He just kept going. He did like 100 sets of rear delts. Never seen anything like it before.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where deep water came from, was just that my crazy mentality with training. But Yasha was really the one who gave it the name, and then it just kind of took a life of its own, because he would, when he was there coaching me, he'd say, "Okay, you're in deep water," and that I knew to listen. And then it just kind of took on the phrase of, "Hey, are we doing deep water today?" Well, every day is deep water. Yeah.
I know, like Muhammad Ali used to say, they would say, "How many reps of sit-ups do you do?"
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't count until it hurts."
Yeah.
Because that's when it matters most.
Exactly.
No pain, no gain type of thing.
Because when it comes down to it, when you think about doing any sort of a heavy lift, it's not the ones where the form is good that you got to work on. It's where the form breaks down. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
And so, when you think, okay, this is getting sticky, I'm going to quit. That's where life's beginning right there.
Mm-hmm.
That if that rep that you got to struggle through, slightly out of position, to just hold that position enough to finish, that's worth more than the first 5 put together that are perfect. I'm not in terms of, working on technique. We're not speaking of that. We're talking about, kicking ass and finding, because if you think about it, pain is this thing. And I remember the first time I experienced it, in my book, I talked about portals. It's like you get to these certain points, and all of a sudden it's like it starts getting quiet, right? And you start to realize that you're getting comfortable. And that's where that's where I reference the portal. And then you just dive in that son of a bitch. And next thing you know, there's a couple of times, I shit you not. And the first time I experienced this actually was in high school. A football coach pushed me really hard in a set of leg extensions of all things.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
But I just got cold and pain went away. It was like, what is that? I want some more.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's hard to get there. So when you get that opportunity, the portal's open, I'll come back tomorrow. Hell no. You're in that son of a bitch. And then you go as far as you can. And then see, here's where the sticky part of it is, once you get there, you almost have to have somebody there to make sure you don't harm yourself. No, I swear to God, like with Yasha, I'd tell him, I'm in. You got to stop me, is I would just go. It was like, okay, it just looks like everyone's going to repeat, and it just... It's amazing, and it's the most wonderful thing, and the way that you feel when you're done. There's nothing like it. You can't buy that. You know.
We had a conversation yesterday, and I feel like right now, when you look at all these different apps and you hear like young guys talking about training, everybody talks about, the reason they're like this is genetics. They're like this because of genetics. And I love hearing guys like you and Stan Efferding, because you talk about like you hit.
He was the skinny kid. I was the fat kid.
Exactly, right? No one would think that you guys, and people are going to look at what you guys are doing these days, it's just steroids or whatever. But no, even people that take shit do not look like this, right? When you talk about your training philosophy, that shit's not easy. And most people do not push themselves anywhere fucking close to that.
100%, and when it comes down to it, it's obviously what you're speaking of is so correct. But like, then there's the other side of that equation. Can you do it for 3 decades? People say to me, I want to get big. I want to do this. And I say, look, if you can, but can you do this for the length of time that's necessary? But I know you can do it today, but in 3,000 days from now, are you still doing it? And it's a different way to put it. But, Stan, 100%. He was the skinny kid, and he's been doing it a long time too. It's crazy. I was the fat kid. He was the skinny kid. he's like the guy that understands the science and breaks things down. I'm the guy that just looks to smash my head against the wall till it opens. So it's a great, it's a great contrast, you know?
Yeah. When it comes to the form and technique, you're kind of referring to, you know, like when you're doing your sets and your reps, you're still trying, you know, to have the best form and technique, but you're just going so far that your body starts to break down. And then you did have somebody there to check you and say, hey, look, this is just getting to be like way too ugly. You need to rack the fucking weight or you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. And because really when it comes down to it is at that point, you know, the state that you're in that kind of that trance, if you will. It sounds kind of crazy. I'm not trying to get religious, but it's very spiritual. It's like you're almost not, you want to stay there. You don't want it to stop, you know. So, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt yourself to have it stop because you want to find it. And you're not getting in there. If you can get in there twice a month, you're doing pretty damn good because you get in there and you like a set of squats. That's where I found the first time. You know, I've learned more about myself in a squat rack than any other place on the planet, hands down. You know, I mean that squat rack could be on the moon. I would still be able to learn a lot about myself. So the squat rack, anyway. But when you get in there and you push yourself so far, it's physical, it's mental, you're done, you know, and it feels good to be done, but you're not bringing that type of effort back tomorrow, you know? So, you know, it's like, it's very correct, Mark. You got to have somebody kind of saying, hey, we want to live to do this again. You know?
Have you gone too far before where you were like, oop, that's a mistake and had to go to like the hospital or anything like that?
You know, I can't say that I've done that, but I mean, I've definitely banged myself up, you know, for sure, you know, and a lot of times you don't know it at the time. You finish. Like I've done some, I'm sure I've done some damage to myself and not quite known it. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I've been training so long, you know, my form, you know, it becomes kind of second nature, you know. It's like you get in that groove, and it's almost like you're able to keep it. The form might come out a little bit, but it's not just falling apart, you know. Because to be totally honest, as we all know, if your form falls apart, you're not moving the weight. The weight won't move. So you got to be in that range to move the weight, or it's not happening.
For somebody that, like, let's say that they're fairly new to this whole thing in terms of lifting, and obviously you just mentioned you've been doing this for over 3 decades, and if you want to get big, you got to be doing it for a long time. What are the primary things that you think they should keep in mind as far as the way they train? Like, you got to train hard, you have to have intensity, but you also got to be smart enough so you don't fuck yourself up and then you end up, you know, not being able to get at it efficiently into the future. So what would your advice to those people be?
So, I get asked questions about a lot of different things, and I'm going to use the response that I use for this as well, because it's not usually what people want to hear. But you have to realize that all of what you do physically in training is directly related to your diet. So, you know, before we talk about training, what's the diet look like? Because there's no way if you want to have some sort of a journey outside of today, then you better have a diet that can help you recover. Yeah. And so really when it comes down, and I know that people hate that. I mean, all the time, people, I'm walking down the street or in the store, hey, blah, 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 ask me a question. And I talk about diet and they're like, damn it, I wanted to hear something else, but I'm being honest. You know, I mean, I could tell somebody what they want to hear, but there's not enough real information being passed around out there, you know? And, you know, it's just the way it is. Everybody I explain to people, check it out. You got 2 jobs. You got a job, nutrition. You make $750 an hour. Then you got a job over here is training. You make $250 an hour. Well, are you going to leave your job making $750 an hour to go work for $250? If you are, you need to rethink your choices.
Yeah, because you can be lean and in good shape without even training at all.
Yes, and then if you work your $750 for the maximum amount of hours, even if you only get to go work half of your $250, you're still ahead.
That's true. And
so people just don't recognize where their investments needs to be, their investment of time. I mean, just like anything, if you want to be successful, you got to put your time where you get the biggest return. And people think that training is that piece of the equation. Training is the fun part, you know?
It makes sense. We have a lot more time to think about our food too. You know, you're in the gym maybe for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And there's some research and information that says, even when you're training pretty hard, you're only burning like 5 to 10% of your overall calories.
Yeah.
For the day from lifting or from whatever form of exercise you choose. So you can't really make up for it with just training, but training over time and building that muscle is also a great investment, because the muscle will help burn calories
100%
as you go down the road, but it takes a long time to build muscle.
100%. And just like building a house, building muscles like building a house. If you don't have all the lumber, you don't have all the plumbing, you're not building that house. Well, if your diet's poor and you go to the gym, it's like trying to build a house with a big pile of sand. It ain't going to happen. So that's really what when it comes down to it, you got to you can't put the cart in front of the horse. And most people, they think, well, I can buy a gym membership and I can go into GNC and I can buy what the salesman tells me to buy. I'm going to get in shape.
Yeah.
Well, that's very misleading.
So it's some of your diet and some of what you've been doing more recently. You talk about no hunger and no cardio. And still being able to get lean and get in good shape, right?
Totally, yes. So the no cardio thing is actually kind of a misinterpreted concept. So when I say no cardio, that's what I'm really saying is this, and I should have probably been more in the beginning when I was preaching that. I should have probably explained a little more, because cardio, and I use that as a term, as an activity that people really don't want to do. So a lot of times, like when I'm coaching people, they say, well, is it okay if I do cardio? Because I know that you say no cardio. And I say, look, if the activity you're doing, you enjoy, do it. Yeah. Because again, going back to the long term, if you don't like doing the stationary bike for 60 minutes a day, it's going to be really hard to do that for 30 years. So again, it goes back to no cardio is really, I should have probably said cardio is an option. Oh, well, I love cardio. Well, if you love cardio, do you take breaks from it? Well, I take a break around Christmas. Well, usually when you love something, you don't take a break. So that's where it comes down to is cardio won't hurt the process by all means. What hurts the process is forcing yourself to do something every day you don't want to do. Such as in the diet, you can't force yourself to eat stuff you don't want every day for 30 years. Any creature will finally say, you know what? I don't give a shit what kind of progress I'm making. I'm not eating that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you like your diet, you like your activity, 30 years is much more obtainable.
When you were doing strongman competitively, how were you fueling yourself different than you are now? Because obviously you eat a lot of protein. That's been a constant thing. You never back off of protein, but were you eating a lot of carbohydrates? Were you more fat dominant, carbohydrate dominant? How did that work for you?
Well, that's a great question, because diet is really what's helped me navigate all of what I've done. Now as a pro bodybuilder, the joke is I'm all show, no go. Because nobody gives a shit how much you lift when you're up there. But strongman was all go. I mean, granted, the fact that I look good was kind of a benefit, but it wasn't a requirement by any means. And so I was eating a lot. And, ultimately when it came down to it, carbohydrate was something that I did have in my diet. It wasn't something that I used on a regular basis, but perfect example is my lovely wife, Terry, just walked in. She can remember this. When I was going through a ACL reconstruction. It was a nasty knee, and I did an ACL. It was a terrible triad, ACL, MCL, and clipped off part of my meniscus. And so, at this point I was heavy. I'm like 325. And so, being inactive, having to be laid up for a little while, it really was important to me to keep weight on. And so there was a period during my recovery, every night before I went to bed, I knew when it was time to go to bed because I could smell the bacon. She would cook a pound of bacon, and I would eat like a quart of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. But it was really what it was. It was just a really small, in your stomach, it's about like this, but it's extremely dense. And that's really what I was after.
I remember hearing about this. I was like, because I remember asking Jesse Burdick, I'm like, what's this guy's diet like? He looks crazy. He's like, don't even fucking bother asking him. He eats a pound of bacon and ice cream every night. I was like, really?
Well, yeah, that was obviously during like a phase where I was, I was just trying to keep weight. At that time, you're not really worried about being a little extra fat. As long as like my wife would say, I can still see your abs, honey. You're okay. You know?
She's like trying to get the lighting just perfect.
That's right.
You can still
That's right.
sort of see him.
Just stand, just back up a little bit, and then flex. Okay, we're good. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so ultimately the diet in those days, high protein has been a staple.
Yeah.
You know, ever since I discovered tuna fish when I was young. But then from there, like in my strength career, it had a lot to do with what our body weight needed to be. So I would use the carbohydrate, always high fats too, but I would use the carbohydrate usually mixed with some sort of high fat. You know, I never just ate the carbohydrate by itself when I was trying to, gain weight. Like there was a period where, so in strongman, there was a period where IFSA was the governing body. They got bought. And they had all these grand plans, and it really fucked everything up, but that's besides another story. They increased the weights substantially. Like we were used to doing a 800-pound yoke. In those days, that was fucking bone crushing, And then they moved, okay, guess what, guys? We're going to go to 900. We're like, oh my God. I mean, there are guys taking this thing 15 feet, Yeah. So we all just started eating, man. I mean, you had to, in those days, there is some merit to weight moves weight. Granted, if you're a lard ass and you got very little muscle, that doesn't work on that side of the spectrum. But if you're gaining weight and you're gaining muscle, your trunk's getting a little thicker, there's more stability. I mean, guys were putting 2 belts on because there was just so much, it was just so difficult, the pressure coming down. So anyway, I would use the carbohydrate and high fats to gain lots of weight, right? But then, to keep myself strong was always the protein. I never ever looked at the carbohydrate as a part of the equation to get stronger. The protein is the building block there, Wow. Okay. It's the protein, it's the rest, and the stimulation is the training. And the balance is really the key.
And then why the shift away from carbohydrates completely? Because I don't think you really eat them hardly at all. Maybe have a cheat or something here or there, but
because I am a full-blown sugar addict. Hands down, cannot look at it any other way. If one of you guys asked me to have a bite of a cookie, well, if I took the bite, I would eat your cookie. I'd eat your cookie. Everybody else's in the room's cookie. I'd eat the box. And then I'd take somebody's car keys and I'd be headed to 7-Eleven to get all their cookies.
Don't eat your fucking cookie. It's mine.
So, because it's like, being a sugar addict is a difficult thing. Because like an alcoholic, you can say, okay, don't drink. But you can't tell an alcoholic, you need to go into the bar, have 1 drink a day. He'd have that drink, he'd be shithouse drunk every day. Well, a sugar addict, you have to avoid sugar. If you have a little bit of sugar, and then what happens is really, as we all know, and especially know we know about nutrition now, everything we eat breaks down into sugar. So if you basically eat, even if you're not eating a straight sugar, I could even eat, plain rice, and it would set me off. Shit. So to a certain extent, going back to the fat guy on the other side of the mirror, keeping the carbohydrate away keeps him on that side. So the carbohydrate is something that it's a tool. It's a very, very powerful tool, but it can also be a very, very harmful tool. You got to know how to use it.
I think you mentioned putting chocolate syrup on your
sugar free.
Oh, sugar free. Okay.
Oh no, if I was eating cookie, it was not sugar free.
Yeah.
I love that. Like most people have like a phase of like, oh, I listen to this type of music during this phase, and his phase was eating a pound of bacon every night. That's insane.
With ice cream.
With ice cream, yeah. But the question I had is like, obviously, it's very successful on your physique, but the old mindset of like, no, if I want to build muscle, I need to have the carbs for my workout, etc.
So let's break down the macronutrients, right? So we got fat, carbohydrate, and we got protein. Well, and as we learn more about all of this, we realize that now it's been proven, it was a question mark before, that excess protein can be broken down into a blood sugar. It's not an easy process for the body to do, but it can be done. So we know clearly that's part of the equation. So it's a building block and it can be an energy source. Not a very efficient one, but it's still an energy source. So there's 2 dimensions. Fat. When we say fat, we're talking essential fat. Let's not talk about, margarine and things like, man-made fats. Let's keep that out of the conversation. An essential fat is a very stable energy source, but also has a lot of healing qualities depending on what fat you're using. And so, again, 2 dimensions. Now we go to the good old carbohydrate, okay? It is an energy source, very fast. It can be like a really fast, release energy source, and it's very powerful. But it only represents energy. There's no healing, there's no building with the carbohydrate. Now, will it fill the muscle out? Yes. Will the muscle have more energy because you chocked it full? Yes. But it doesn't help with the rebuilding process. So I don't really give a shit if my muscles are not, like right now, it as funny as it sounds, I would be considered depleted. But I live my life depleted. If I went and ate, say I ate a cup of rice with 5 or 6 meals, I would fill out. I should probably take more than that, but but the bottom line is I could use a carbohydrate to fill my muscle, right? And that's something that the carbohydrate can be used for. It's a great energy source, quick release energy source, but there's no building. Yeah. So that being said, to answer the question is, when it comes down to getting strong, it's really nuts. You could be tired, but you're not really going to be stronger from the carbohydrate. That makes sense. So it's a very misunderstood. It's a very misunderstood concept in terms of I deal with people. I'm not strong without the carbohydrate. Well, if your diet is done properly, you'll actually have great energy without the carbohydrate, and then you put the carbohydrate in, and it's like a turbocharger.
What about the pump? Some people are like, I can't get a pump without the carbs.
Well, so people hire me to coach them. They say, okay, I want to gain 20 pounds of muscle. I want to lose 15 pounds of fat. Okay, that's the goal. So I create a program for them, and usually what I do with people is I'll run like a split test with carbohydrate, and what I'll do is I'll pull it out slowly, and if they start to respond positively, we'll keep it out. We'll bring it back in periodically, but usually the energy will be stable. They'll feel great. They'll be more clear, but they're not getting the pump in the gym. So I'm not getting a pump in the gym. Well, so let's review why you hired me. Did you hire me to get a pump in the gym, or did you hire me to build that muscle and tear off the body fat? Well, not having a pump in the gym is, you could call it a negative side effect of this process. But okay, in a month, look at the progress we've made. So, if you just hire me to give you a pump in the gym, it's a real easy job. Yeah. You didn't need to hire me to do that. Yeah. And then they start to realize, okay, this is kind of part of the, you want to make a goddamn omelet, you're gonna have to break some eggs. Let's be honest here,
Man, first off, I fucking love what you're saying, because so I found that we've kind of landed on that same thing. Like back in the day, years ago, I would give myself the excuse that if I want to be able to perform, I need to have all my carbohydrates. So I'd be eating 300, 400, sometimes 450 to 500 grams of carbs.
Oh, shit.
To fuel myself for those workouts, right? Yeah. But when I started going low carb and then some days no carb, I found that I was actually having still really good workouts. And the one thing that actually made a big shift for me was just adding electrolytes in. You know what I mean? And like sodium, potassium, magnesium, so I don't cramp up and I still feel good. Now, there are days where I don't have any carbs, but the days where I feel a little bit lethargic, I can get away with just maybe having 50 grams of carbs. And I feel great. I think people think that they need they eat too many carbs to fuel, even though they don't need that much.
And here's the thing is what you hear, people that are really into nutrition talk more, like you hear Stan talk about all the time. Micronutrient values is like another layer of food that people just don't get. And so here's the deal. Put it plain. If your diet is micronutrient, you're not deficient. If you have what your body needs, the odds are you're going to feel fucking great without the carbohydrate. Yeah. Then you can bring the carbohydrate in. It's like a fucking,
yep.
It's like you got this. It's like, okay, you want to kick ass for the day. You take that 50 grams, look out. The carbohydrate is like a crutch to most people. Here's an example I help people understand. So you got 2 twin brothers, Mark and myself, say, listen.
Handsome twins.
That's it. So we were both fat boys, shit. So, so we're playing basketball, right? We're twins, identical twins. We both go up for the same ball. We come down, we both twist our right ankle somehow identically. We go to the hospital. Doc says, hey, you're not broken, but you got a bad sprain. You got a bottle of pills for you, a bottle of pills for you, the painkillers. So the smart one, we'll call that Mark, takes the pills as prescribed. The doctor says, hey, You're going to take these until the pain goes away. You know, when you wake up, if it doesn't hurt, don't take the pill. So he listens. He takes about 5 or 6 of the 60 that the doctor gives us. Well, the other side of the fence, myself, the dumb one, I keep taking that goddamn pill. Well, all of a sudden, there's no more pills. Well, the doctor says, you're healed. You don't need more pills. Well, I don't feel normal with the pill. The pill has become a crutch. I need the crutch to feel normal. Yeah. So a person that can't function without the carbohydrate, in most cases, he's become dependent. And if the diet is done properly with the macros, you don't have a dependency. And then at that point, when you bring it back in, it's like a goddamn jackhammer. You know, it's like, it's a whole different, it just presents a whole different possibility.
Yeah.
You know,
it's kind of funny. I look at carbs like a supplement.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. You know, the difference is you're not paying 10 times what they're worth, and they're not ground up and colored and flavored. And so, yeah, so I totally, you know, if your diet's on point, the carbohydrate should be a very powerful tool.
I know, you know, some people are listening right now and they're like, this isn't Dr. Lane Norton talking, you know, or their favorite nutrition person that they listen to. But I just want to make it clear that there's a lot of truth to what you said, what you're saying. I know that you're also just sharing your own experience and experiences that you've helped other people with, but there's a lot of evidence, a lot of proof, a lot of research, however you want to say it, that the human body does not necessarily, quote unquote, need dietary carbohydrates, because we can make them out of protein if necessary, if we do need it for something, and fat is a great energy source as well.
And to what you're saying, 100%. I mean, keep in mind, all of what I've kind of discussed here is 100%. This is an organic methodology that I've built myself. Now, I didn't care what research said. I didn't care what was proven. I didn't care what was not proven. I just knew it worked for me. And as I continued down my path, the research started to support what I've been doing. So again, it's one of those things. I mean, I kind of live my life this way, you know. If you want to get somewhere, if you're following somebody, you're only going to get as far as he's going. So you got to get out to the left, get out to the right, get in your own space. And then what's in front of you is truly up to you. You're not running into somebody that you could be passing up, and you're not being influenced by what he's doing. You're being influenced on what you see and you feel works for you. And that right there, that is deep water. That is me. That is how I coach. That's how I live my life. Sometimes, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, it gets me into a bind sometimes because I love to try shit. I mean, if I walk into a situation and I see a really nice looking pool of water, you know, sometimes I won't actually verify that it's water before I run head steam and dive in that son of a bitch. And I'll hit the bottom. There's not a drop of water. I'll knock my teeth out. Like, son of a bitch, that didn't work. But, you know, I'll stand up. I'll put my teeth in my pocket. I'll climb out of the goddamn pool and I'll look for another one, hoping there's water the next time. And really what it comes down to it, that kind of that fearless trial and error is what has allowed me to do what I do.
1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
You know, I honestly, when it comes down to, when I was younger, I really subscribed to some of this stuff. And then I realized, okay, I'm doing what the common, you know, what the status quo is, and I'm still hungry. Well, maybe I wasn't hungry, but I wanted to eat. So that's when I just kept eating. I was overeating protein. Well, you know, I do sometimes, but if you do the calculations, I'm way over 2, right? Well, again, going back to the beginning, kept me from being fat, and I was getting very strong in the process. So
you're near 600 grams of protein a day?
No, more than that. You know, I'm doing, you think like this, it's when I talk about what I'm eating, this is cooked. So we're talking 6-7 pounds of flesh a day. Now convert that into uncooked. You lose about 30% when you cook something.
Yeah.
So you do the math on that. That's a shitload of flesh, you know?
How do you eat that much? Like,
No, yeah.
like, yeah.
Especially if it's a lean source.
Yeah. And do you you have meals right here, like ready or something?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, see, here's the thing.
Go anywhere
when she cooks, it's like she's cooking like whatever. 20 pounds of whatever we're cooking is getting cooked. You don't pull out. First off, you don't buy a container of flesh if it's a couple of pounds. It's got to be a minimum of a 10-pound bag, or there's no reason to buy it.
I love it.
I
fucking love it.
I mean,
It's like the Flintstones.
Calling a spade here.
Spare rib.
But again, the whole thing about it is when you start to recognize, it's really what do you think about it? It's like a conversation. I say something, based on what I say, there's a response. Mm-hmm. Based on the response, I say something again. Now, picture that person or that thing that I'm talking to is the body. So if I'm eating all this protein and I'm recognizing there's a benefit, then I'm getting the response I'm looking for. Yeah. So, of course, when it comes down to as I get older, we were talking earlier about how it's harder for me to keep weight on. I've actually started to do a lot more egg whites because it's very easy to eat and digest.
Mm-hmm. Cooked egg whites, probably, right? Or are they just
not a lot? I cook them, I drink them.
Okay.
I take a bath in them.
Lotion.
I like that.
I put an IV with them.
Does this amount of protein bother your stomach, or?
Well, I'm gonna let my wife kind of answer that question. If I drink, so what I'd like to do is I got these 3-cup shakers, the big boys. Yeah. And I like to fill one of those up. I mean, God knows if you want to hear the recipe. So we're talking the egg whites. We got probably 10 Splendas. We've got some peanut butter powder. My favorite is crushed flax seeds. And anything that I can do. I mean, I like, that's the fat kid talking. That's like what I drink before bed. The problem is, I'm going to say probably about 4 or 5 hours after I drink that. So probably about halfway into the night, she calls it machine guns. I'm just blowing. And it's funny because it's really weird. If it's really bad, I can feel myself getting tense, right? And so I'll kind of wake up and I'll start to push. And I'm like, it won't come out. It's kind of those ones where you're afraid to push all the way because you're thinking, God, I'm in bed right now. If this goes wrong, I need to be sitting on the toilet, So I'll tense it. I'll give it a push. But, you give it a push and you let off, it goes back. You don't really know what the next little bit's going to feel like because you got to keep. So you push, you tense the abs, you feel, giving that a little push, and you kind of wait. Okay, you got to go one more time. So you keep the tensity. You got to keep your stomach tense.
It's like in a chamber.
Yes.
But then sometimes it disappears somehow.
Then once it starts to go, because these are the ones that are like kind of high pitched and loud. So you don't know. So you don't know if they're gonna be just air only. Yeah. And so you got to be ready. You're tensed up, so you can get ready to back out real quick if you need to. And so, but what happens?
You got a lot of experience.
Oh yeah, shit. So what happens is, and then it just turns into this what she calls a machine gun. It's just this really fucking, I shouldn't say high pitched, but not like an elephant fart, not the bass drum. And so the problem is and I sleep with a fan.
Oh no. God.
And I sleep naked, usually with just
blowing right towards her.
I have a blanket, but it's not really on me too much. Usually between my legs, so I'm not sweating. And it just blows it right on her. And I'll hear her go, oh, and she'll take and roll herself up in the blankets. And sometimes I wake up in the morning and she's gone to one of the guest bedrooms. So I know that it's gotten much worse than.
Well, that's love. Like that is real, true love right there.
No, you want to hear true love. Here's a story for true love right here. Ooh. So, no, this is good shit. This is one of those times where I realize, okay, dude, you need to fucking wise up. You got to keep her here. All right. So, a buddy of mine lived next door. He cooked me a steak. Mm-hmm. Son of a bitch gave me food poisoning. God damn it, Jerry. Anyway, so I eat the steak. And I remember we go home and we're getting in bed, and at that point, unfortunately, I was using Ambien to sleep because I was having a hard time sleeping. So I took my Ambien, and I'm thinking, usually I could feel it coming. I head for bed. And I'm like, it's not coming. So I kind of go to bed thinking, and I'm laying there, and I'm like, okay, I'm not falling asleep. Something's wrong. Next thing you know, I start to feel this weird thing in my stomach. Like, oh, son of a bitch. And like 5 minutes after that, I didn't feel sick, but I'm like, I'm going to throw up. It was like, just knew. It was like God tapped me on the shoulder and said, get up and go into the bathroom. So I get up and go in the bathroom, and I don't throw up in the toilet. It hurts too bad to be on my hands and knees bent over like that. So I throw up in the sink. So I start throwing up. I'm just, and I'm thinking to myself, as this chunks are coming out of me, I'm like, you should have chewed this better because this fucking hurts coming out of here. These chunks of steak are going in the sink, and I'm just going. And the sink is filled up, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Well, we have the dual sink, so I jump over to the other sink, and I start throwing up in that one. And she's in there, and she's kind of rubbing my back, and the other one's getting full. And I'm, between the retching, I'm looking over, and I'm seeing the other one. It's not drained, right? And she's looking there. Next thing you know, I don't feel the stroke on my back. I look over there, and she is taking her bare hands, going down, fishing out chunks of steak and throwing it in the toilet. Now, right there, come on now. Yeah. What else do you want? That right there is a good woman. No, I mean, that was one of those times where, it would have made a horrific mess if she had not done that, or I'd have had to go to the toilet, which most wives would have said, you son of a bitch, get on your hands and knees, but she was gracious enough to.
You ever have a double dragon happen? Double dragons where it comes out of the mouth and the butt at the same time? That's really
terrible.
wild.
And then the problem is, when that starts to happen and you're thinking, oh, here it comes, you make the quick spin. Well, usually that's the point. That's the point. Yes. That's the point where it starts to come out your ass again, and you shoot that on the cupboards on the when you're making the turn. So it's
you've had experience with this.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then the worst part is when this happened, I was cleaning up my own shit, literally. That day I had to clean up my own shit. I was like, no, this is not okay.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You recently on your IG story, you were and I've seen this video. Mark showed it where you're posing, and it's you're like, oh yeah. And Mark has the best definition for it, and I think this is what you were looking for earlier. It's like somebody tearing carpet out. And that's what the sound
there we
is.
go. There we go. Yeah. Well, see, that's a good thing. See, that tells you got a tight sphincter. It'd be if you let a fart and just went. You think, oh,
bad news.
What has this guy been doing?
Oh man,
you're a disgusting man, and I love it.
Well, the bottom line is that this is stuff that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But I just have no problem talking about it.
Sure does.
That's it.
Have you noticed like if you cook your egg whites that you don't end up with the same gut problem?
Yeah, keep in mind there's a certain amount I can drink and I don't have the issue.
Right.
Once I cross that issue, once I get over that barrier, so what I really do is I cook them. When I'm at home, when we have all the resources, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a bowl of my food, and the bottom is going to be egg whites, and the top will be some sort of flesh. And then I deal with the Splenda and the peanut butter powder and the soy sauce and everything else that I put on there. But the cooked, when I drink, it's largely because I'm behind on my cooking of the egg whites. So,
and you're trying just to get the extra protein in there.
Yeah.
I think this would be an amazing part to kind of give the people tips on how to get protein in easier. You already mentioned the egg whites, but like some people out there, like I just can't eat my 200 grams. I just feel too, I'm not hungry enough.
Well, so and that's a great question, and that's something that I deal with all the time because people that come to me that want to put on muscle and they're having a hard time eating. Well, because when you think about what your body has a job to process what you eat, and everybody's different. Everybody digests differently. And so there are going to be foods that you're going to have to remove from what somebody's eating because it's basically taking the efficiency of their digestive tract away. Or, it can be way off balance. I mean, the bottom line is they're having trouble eating, and it's real because there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And a good coach, a good nutritionist you don't just work from the outside in. You got to work from the inside out. One of the things that I'm constantly working on with people is how to keep their digestive juices fresh, so to speak. Because you can't just stuff all this stuff in there. It's like you got to change the oil in your car. You can't just drive the thing until it breaks. Yeah. Well, people do that, but these are not the people that are trying to build muscle, So that's part of the problem right there. They can't eat enough because they're not processing efficiently. So once you get the processing squared away, it could be because they're eating too much at once. That jams their track. It could be because they're eating foods that are too processed. It could be because they're eating foods like, perfect example, for me, if you took 50 grams, or let's call it 30, because that's roughly an avocado. take 30 grams of avocado or 30 grams of almond butter. I'm going to digest that avocado twice as fast, literally twice as fast. So when I'm in, that's kind of the same thing with the egg whites. The egg whites allows me to digest faster. You know, if I got a really good organic beef, I can digest that like a mother. But if it's not a really good organic beef, it's going to be slower. You know?
Yeah, I think beef is pretty amazing. I think it may be because it takes a while to actually break it down. You know, it might quote unquote digest slow, but because it digests slow, I think you assimilate it really well and doesn't give you like hardly any stomach issues.
Yeah, I mean, beef is something that way back in the beginning, and it's one of my first real sponsors was actually a company called Grassland Beef. Now they're called U.S. Wellness Beef, and this was back before the organic push was recognized. And so he was like, "Hey, you know, I need help." He came up to me at a Strongman Expo, a Strongman show. It was actually the LA Fit Expo when it was first started. There was just a handful of us doing an exhibition. Said, "Hey, I need some help, you know, getting this." Because I got this underground locker. It was in Missouri, some underground freezer full of ground beef. He couldn't sell it. I mean, he had customers, but not enough. And he said, "Look, I'll give you all the ground beef you want. Just help me get my brand out there." And so there was a handful of us, myself, Jesse Morunde, rest his soul. You know, we started helping him promote this stuff, but we were getting like 100 to 150 pounds of organic grass-fed ground beef every month. And I was just, I had no idea. I was probably looking back, probably one of the variables that really helped me in my strength career, because that organic beef fat is powerful. I mean, you're talking about, you know, the omegas and all of the good fats and off the charts. You know, so, but ultimately that you got to get food in your stomach that your body can digest so that you can actually improve that level of processing. So because when you get that down, you'll be hungry. Yeah. And hunger is good. Unfortunately, so many people, you know, our society tells us, "Oh, you're overeating, you're not supposed to eat much." Well, no, eating is good. It's fuel, you know. And it's kind of conflicting. You know, a lot of people that don't understand, they get kind of taken off course by some of the things that are said by people who don't know. You know?
Yeah, and that's actually perfect. And I don't want to pick on the person in the live chat, but they're just kind of referencing that like some of the research might not show, or it was a long-winded message, but basically saying, you know, the research doesn't necessarily show that like a high protein diet without fiber is actually like healthy for you. Now it may, there you go.
Thank you, brother.
So what are your, like, do you focus on fiber and that sort of thing? Like, how do you keep it safe, I guess we'll say?
I'm sorry, I was actually so happy Mark brought me more water.
No.
I lost some of that. Can you give it to me
one more
absolutely.
Time? Yeah. So just somebody was just commenting about like the research on a high protein diet and how like it's not necessarily there yet, but the dangers of going high protein with no carbs or, you know, nothing else, like especially fiber. So do you focus on getting fiber in at all, or like what's your take on quote the research?
Well, there's a couple of sides to that. Number one, I was just on Dr. Baker's show not too long ago when we were actually talking about high levels of protein, and this is a guy who stays on top of all of the medical journals. So if you want you want someone who can give you what's really going on and what's being proven and tested, he's the guy. And he said there's absolutely nothing that tells us that high levels of protein is hard on our organs, which is most people will guarantee that fact. So that's something, you know, I've always felt myself, but, you know, to have somebody like him who stays on top, because, you know, you might hear that a couple of years ago, but what's current? It changes, you know, nutrition changes like technology. You know, what was proven last year could be disproven this year. So this was a month ago. So I'm very confident to put my stamp on that because I trust Dr. Baker. I think we all do. He's a
absolutely.
very, very knowledgeable guy. So that the whole thing of the high protein, we can throw that out the window. Now, for me personally, I use fiber and different types of fiber to really keep my digestive juices alive. You know, when I talk about flax seeds are, for me, what happens is it really keeps my digestion going. I mean, I use vegetables, you know, obviously they're fiber, but I also really use the the micronutrient values is what I'm looking for in the vegetable. I'll use the flaxseed to kind of keep my digestion up, but you know, it'll go in and, I mean, I don't understand the science to the T, so I'm just really kind of paraphrasing here. But there's different types of fibers in flaxseed, chia seeds. I know flaxseed works best for me. Because keep in mind, there's all sorts of methods, but what works best for the individual is really what we're getting down to. Yeah. Flax seeds in my diet once or twice a day. It basically goes in and it takes the digestive juices that have started to kind of wear out or not work as well, pulls them out of there. Your body at that point starts to create newer ones, so you keep your digestive power. It's almost like an oil change. And so for me, the fiber really has more to do with keeping my digestion up to speed. It also helps me take nice, you know, I guess it keeps the cutter clean as well. Because if I don't have a, you know, like
clean.
because like
tapered shit.
That's it. See, like I'll be totally honest. You know, we've been traveling. You know, and so we travel a lot, and so you don't always have your resources, and so I haven't been on top of my fiber. You know. And so there's, you know, I mean, I'm a big morning dump guy. I get up and I'm ready to go. And when everything is good, you know, it's a relatively easy job to get myself cleaned up to get about my day. When I don't have my resources, it's often a second shower. I always shower at night. I always shower at night because I like to wake up. I like to have today has been prepared yesterday. Mm-hmm. I don't wake up and figure what's going on. So, you know, I to be totally honest, when I can't clean myself up efficiently, and I give it a hell of a college try. I'll even go to the wet wipes before I get in the shower because the shower wasn't planned.
And you're like, this ain't working.
Yeah, I'm like, look, okay, you know, you're just going to be easier to get in the shower at this point. Save some time. Yeah. It's not planned, but it's going to be more efficient. So, you know, and usually I don't have to clean myself only from the waist down. So, you know, it's a short shower.
You know, it's funny about fiber. Like years ago, I used to really like focus on fiber, and I kind of hate to admit this, but I barely eat any fiber these days. I eat a lot of protein. I eat a lot of fat. Sometimes I'll have carbs, like I supplement carbs. I think I'm going to start phrasing it that way. But fiber,
I like it. Bro.
Yeah, I'm going to start phrasing it that way. But fiber, I haven't even been like focusing on eating fiber for like over a year now, and my digestion's been great. I used to think that I needed it, like I needed a lot of it, right? But it's been all right.
Well, I mean, it's clearly, this is kind of what we're talking about. It's all specific to the individual.
Yeah.
You're in a kind of a sweet spot for what you're doing. You know, my guess would be, I'll never know because I won't do this, but my guess would be if I wasn't pushing my digestive tract so hard, I probably wouldn't need it as much.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, if I'm that's just the way I do it. You know, I'm it's either off or it's on. Mm-hmm. And if it's on, it's wide open. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to push, I have to do all the little things, you know, and that's kind of one of what's really with all of my life. I take pride in the fact that I do all the little things to make it work, because you can go to the gym, you can eat, you know, blah, 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 but it's really all of the little things that make this work in a way that gets you where you want to go.
Yeah. I don't eat much fiber either. I don't think it really, matters a ton, you know.
Well, dude, you're looking good. You're looking jacked.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think, you know, sometimes there's like a difference between, you know, what's kind of like in your best interest, what's good for you, and then like what's optimal sometimes is like a totally different thing. So none of us really know, but I don't think anybody knows like what's optimal. You know, they just kind of throw out these blanket things. Yeah. You should have 40 grams of fiber every day. And that seems very excessive to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, totally, brother. And what I love the word optimal because I use that often. I tell the people I help, look, we need to optimize your system. Because everybody's system has an ability to make a certain amount of progress, and everybody's progress is going to be different. What are you capable of? Let's find out. Let's optimize what your body will give us. And so on that level, sometimes it could be like, for me, if I use too many flax seeds, I just take a much bigger dump. It's not an easier cleaning job. It's just more to flush down. So I realized that, you know, when I'm doing my flax seeds, if I know that there's a certain amount that I can use to get the job done, you know, but to be totally honest, I really like it when I take a dump and it stacks up out of the water.
That's always, you feel accomplished if you do
that's
that.
it. That's it. When you get, because when you get it, when it goes under the water, the water's kind of designed to hold that smell down. But when it stacks up and it's cresting, then you
Cresting.
Yeah, that's right. That's
got
it.
the full-on
See,
poop
then
smell.
then people in the house, then people in the house know you're getting it on. You know?
Yeah.
They know what happened.
That's it.
That is a proud moment, right?
That's
I
it.
love that. Yeah. Do you guys think that with the like the high fiber thing, it's mainly for people that are consuming a lot of carbs? Because like what I hear often is it's like, oh, let me get this high fiber or extra fiber in to make me feel full, instead of like keeping it low fiber and then maybe not getting as full.
I would think for me, it's almost like that person or the thought process behind that is eating a lot of vegetables to fill you up.
Yeah.
We're not talking about using fiber as a methodology of feeling full. We're talking about a methodology of using fiber to optimize our digestive powers.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, but keep in mind, I came from that world too. You know, where I was trying to eat, you know, things. You know, you can eat as much celery as you want. You know, in the beginning of me figuring out my system, I was overeating something, and I overate a lot of different shit. You know,
There is evidence that fiber does slow down digestion. So you can make an argument that it could potentially help somebody get a little leaner, depending on what they were eating and kind of how they were going about it. But I think for the three of us, we don't really use it much. I'll just eat it occasionally. I'll eat vegetables occasionally just to kind of, to kind of get more full, more so than anything else.
Yeah, and one of the things that that for me in my practices and what I teach the people I work with is that to optimize, I mean, body fat storage it's a safety blanket for the body. It's scared. It's doing that because it's missing something. Well, if it had everything it needed, it would let go of that body fat, right? So when you use the right amount of fiber to help nutrient upload and you have the proper diet with the right nutrients and the body can upload it and the body's happy, it's not scared, it's not uncomfortable, it'll start dumping off that body fat, largely because it doesn't feel the need for its safety blanket anymore. And so a lot of times people look at losing body fat from the wrong side of the fence. They think, oh, eat less, more activity. Well, that just scares the body even more, and it prompts it to try to put on more body fat. So people are always talking about calorie deficit. I mean, yes, it works, it's proven, but it's a struggle. Your body's fighting you every step of the way. Come from the other side. You know, what we're talking about is help using fiber for a better efficiency of your upload and your digestion. Well, then you get that proper and you get the right micronutrient values coming through there. Your body's able to suck them up. It's like, whoa. You know, when people start having better energy, they start sleeping better, they start getting stronger. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I got to cut a new hole in my belt, but they're never hungry. It's really not about a deficit at that point. It's about, you know, taking this creature that can work with you or work against you and getting it on your side.
Yeah, protein and fiber are similar in the sense that they're not great energy sources, but they can help fill you up.
Totally.
How do you use, because you went through a good amount of liquid here today, how are you using like water and hydration? Because I know a big part of your diet and your nutrition and what you help people with is just to keep them from being hungry.
Yeah, well, I mean, keep in mind, never hungry is one of the staples of what I teach. But never hungry is really a rule that I help people understand that helps them reach their goals. People don't say to me, I don't want to be hungry. That's not what they come to. They come to me because they want to get in better shape. Usually they want to lose body fat. So the first thing we got to do is we got to basically get the body to stop thinking it's going to have to save body fat. So if it's hungry, it's directly saying to the body, okay, next time you eat, it's going to store something because it's been left without. So never hungry is really something that I help people understand. When you're hungry, it prompts your body to store. So we want to get rid of that. That's the first step. So in terms of the water, which is never water, this is the fat boy, loves the sweet shit. If you took a drink of that, it would be pretty startling how sweet it is.
What's in it?
Because we don't have all of our resources, it's just one of those goddamn squirt things.
Like a Mio thing or something?
Yeah, exactly. But Yeah, water consumption for me is big because, you know, our body has so much water. And because I don't eat carbohydrate, it doesn't really have the carbohydrate takes water to store. So my body doesn't carry lots of water in terms of, because I'm carbohydrate free. So I'm basically constantly drinking water, and I feel better when I stay on top of my water. What I do is I schedule it. So these bottles represent a certain period of my day, and it makes a big difference. I mean, like I'm sitting here licking my lips because I ran out. Mark, thank God you went and got my bottle, because I start getting dry lips when I start getting dehydrated just that quick. Yeah. But again, it's do I have to do it? I could totally work it differently, but it's just me doing what I need to do to optimize what I love to do.
You don't want to get behind, be hungry, and have cravings and so on.
Yeah, I mean, the water helps digestion. You know, it's healthy in terms of keeping everything cleansed. You know, so there's a lot of upside to drinking water. Now, obviously, you can drink too much water. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's the more you drink, the better. But I find for myself, there's a certain amount that I drink where I feel the best.
I find it really interesting how, like, all of us got to the place of, like, I guess, dealing with hunger and cravings in a different way, because, like, I still can, but I could eat a lot of food. And when I was like 260, 270 something, the hardest thing for me when trying to cut was like the always feeling hungry. And when I felt hungry, I had to eat. So like both of us started using some fasting, and we found that we first off got used to the feeling of hunger, but then now when our body feels hungry, I and you, we don't feel prompted to go eat. We can just eat a big ass meal at the end of the day,
yeah.
Right? And you were doing the same things because you're just eating consistent protein throughout all the day just so that you're never hungry. But we all overeat protein, and because of that, we're able to maintain really, really good body compositions.
I mean, there's no question. There's so many formulas, you know. And one of the things, that so everybody understands too, is that let's just say that everybody can agree that we're all in fairly good shape. Let's just assume that that's going to be taken by the audience, okay?
Let's hope so.
So that being said, you know, the things that we can do and get away with, or, you know, like fasting and this, that, and the other, is going to affect very differently to somebody like us versus someone who's 80 pounds overweight that's trying to. So, you know, a lot of these methods are, you know, that people use work great in certain circumstances or a certain person. And just because it works for them doesn't mean that they should run off and do it themselves, not understanding what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you're saying is huge, because what if somebody listening is they've just really have never even tried a diet at all, or it's somebody that has failed many times with a diet, or it's someone that has lost weight and then gained. I mean, there's so many different scenarios.
Totally.
So for one person, you know, we might recommend intermittent fasting. That might work great for them. But for somebody else, it might be catastrophic and just lead to more and more binge eating.
100%. I mean, I say people, generally speaking, if people are using fasting as a means to lose weight, I don't think that's a good practice. Because when you fast, your blood sugar is going lower and lower during the fast. Well, you get to a certain point which is low enough, the body sends out that emergency signal that says, I need sugar now. And that's a battle that is hard to win, you know.
Yeah, how long are you going to fight that for?
Yeah. And then you get somebody who, usually if someone's like really overweight, and even I'm, you know, a classic case, I'm a sugar addict. My blood sugar gets too low, I have a hell of a time eating the right shit, you know. It's very difficult for me to make a proper choice when my blood sugar is low, much like it would be hard for me to make a good choice if I was drunk, you know. So again, it's really so specific, you know. And so I totally agree, Mark. People need to be careful with some of the things they hear. You know, the thing that I really been preaching lately, knowledge is the power. You can't just, work for my neighbor, I'm going to try it. Learn a little bit, you know. And the hard part is that it's hard to find the right information nowadays. That's the challenge.
I think it's a good segue into talking about performance enhancing drugs. There's so much going on with like TRT and HRT, and we're just seeing like a huge uptick of young people on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, guys that are, 15, 16 years old, just talking about like wanting to do their first cycle,
or they already have.
Yeah, or they already have, and we're just like, man, like You know, we know, you know, we know what the deal is with it, but a lot of people don't know what the deal is with it, and they're jumping into things recklessly. And there's a lot of information kind of swirling around, and it's hard to grasp the right information. And I try to encourage people as much as possible, like, try to find as many resources as you can before you make the decision, you know. And what I share for myself personally is, you know, I started doing them when I was about 25 and I never stopped. And so it's something to think about and consider. Like, you might feel the need, like as I do, to be on them potentially for the rest of my life. And I think that's a big decision that some of these young people might want to think twice about.
You know, on that topic, I think probably one of the biggest, I guess the biggest negatives, the biggest damaging factor was the internet. Because, you know, the internet, you get these message boards and you get people going on there talking about what they're doing, and you get some kid that reads, oh, well, you know, whatever this guy's handle is, you know, big boy 25, you know, or, you know, strong bench presser 85, whatever it is. Oh, well, you know, he benches 500 pounds. He says it on the message board. He does all this, that, and the other. So he'll take that as fact, and he'll go out and he'll try to, then he's got the whole acquisition problem. You know, he's got to go through, you know, acquiring this stuff. And, you know, it's the black market has become such a terrible place for acquisition. But the best piece of advice that I can give to anybody about this whole topic is I mean, to have some medical backing to the journey is the number one thing, because it's harmful. You know, you need to understand what it does. You understand what the risks are. You understand how to combat it. And you're not going to learn this stuff on a goddamn message board. You know?
I'm curious, do you also believe that you're going to be doing stuff for the rest of your life too? Obviously that the stuff can be done in a healthy fashion, but do you also feel like, is there ever a point that you'll stop or not?
I mean, the thing with TRT and having a doctor overlook you, it totally changes the game, you know, and that's the thing. You know, like I think you just mentioned the other day, you know, TRT, it's become such a common thing, especially now, a male over 40, you know, or excuse me, actually, I think it's 35.
Yeah.
As soon as you're over 35,
numbers dropping in.
As soon as it used to be 40. You know, it's just like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You know, and any athlete that has dealt with any injury has dealt with this type of a scenario in terms of being prescribed by a doctor, everything from PEDs to painkillers to antibiotics. I mean, you name it, anti-inflammatories. But the key is, it's information. Going back to what we're talking about with the diet, same thing. It's all information based, you know. And so, for somebody that's going to carry on in the deeper part of their life, you know, if your endocrine system, which is basically the environment, you know, of your hormones, if your endocrine system is tanked, you know, because for whatever reason, a lot of times people's endocrine system is tanked just because poor diet, a lot of things. It's very, very difficult to carry on at any sort of a high level. So TRT has really been a savior for older athletes.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Like Mark mentioned that he started when he was 25, and he already, how many years of lifting? Was that 12 years of lifting already?
Right. Yep.
Right. How about you? Did you lift for a while before you did that, or?
Well, my first experience came in terms of an injury. You know, You run into an injury, you're prescribed, and then it kind of opens the door. You know.
Okay. And let me ask this too, because we have a lot of listeners that range in ages, but a lot of young guys, like after 2 years of lifting, 3 years of lifting, they're like, oh, I've peaked out my potential. Now I'm going to hop on and start some shit, right? What would your suggestion be? Obviously get somebody to watch over you as you do whatever you do. Somebody that knows their stuff, a doctor ideally. Sure. But outside of that, if somebody wants to make that leap into the realm of anabolics, what should they be thinking about? How long do you think they should have lifted? Because in my personal opinion, I think a lot of people, first off, they're not lifting long enough.
Great question. So how long should they be lifting? That's the question we're asking. Well, let's go backwards a little bit. How long have you actually tried this journey with the proper nutrition and the lifting? Because again, this is like icing you're going to put on a cake, right? Well, if you don't have a fucking cake, You got a mouthful of icing, and we've all been to a birthday party, and went for that fucking corner because you want a lot of icing, and realize, oh, son of a bitch, I didn't get any cake, and it's actually not a very good bite. You know, who wants a mouthful of icing? So when it comes down to it, to answer that question, diet's in check, training's in check. There's going to be if your diet's in check and your training's in check, you're going to go through a really good phase of gain. And once you get to that point and the gains become much harder, but you're still doing what you're supposed to do, that's the point where you start making choices. That's the crossroad. You know, I mean, so many people just want to do it because everybody else is. And the thing about it is, it's doesn't do the job for you. You know, again, if there's no cake, there's no place to put the icing. You know, and so it's just that simple. You know, you know, people who, I mean, it's funny, you get all sorts of people that will say, oh, you know, this, that, and the other, and they have this idea. Well, those people clearly don't have the experience, because that idea that they're speaking of is completely untrue. You know, so it's hard work, proper nutrition, consistency. When that runs its course, that now you're at the crossroad where you can, you know, you can make a responsible decision, like meaning, okay, I've done what I've done. And for some people that may go a long time.
Yeah.
You know, other people may be shorter, but the question you got to ask yourself is, did you basically maximize what you could do? Because it's an enhancement, you know, it doesn't do the job for you.
What is the most frequently asked question that you get? You know, if you're at a grocery store, or, you know, if you're walking around in a tank top, what do people usually ask you? Like, they ask you about your arms, your traps, your lats. They ask anything specific, or?
You know, usually what it comes down to, and actually my wife kind of helped me register this, is that they'll ask me a question, which, you know, a lot of times is kind of, you know, it's kind of silly. They'll say, do you work out? Right. Well, you know, it's like saying, you know, is the sky blue?
They're recognizing. Yeah, they're recognizing.
Yeah, and really what they're saying, they're just trying to start a conversation. And then I started to realize, okay, it's not just, they just don't know how to open up. Well, know how I start the conversation. So, yeah, I work out. No, that's not what I say. I said, no, I was born this way. And then they're like, what? And I said, no, I'm joking. You know? But what I'm doing is I'm trying to lighten.
It's a condition I have.
That's right.
I'd rather you not point it out.
Very sensitive.
Yeah,
about this.
that's right. I don't. Please don't talk about that. So it's really what I'm doing is when I come back and say something like that, I'm just breaking the ice. So then they can really ask what they want to ask, which is usually a piece of advice of some sort. You know,
how come we need women for that every time? Right? They simplify it. That's great that she's like, oh, they're just trying to talk to you, and you're thinking like, this guy's a fucking idiot. Why is he asking me if I work out?
Well, you know, when I started to actually help people with nutrition, then it really kind of turned how I looked at it, because then I realized, you know, to help somebody, give somebody helpful information is a huge part of what I do now. I enjoy helping people recognize, you know, what they didn't recognize before, to help them do something they couldn't do before. So once I actually started to coach and help people with nutrition, you know, and motivate people, then it became a much different deal. You know, before that, it was like, God, you know, just ask me the question. But now I've just become more sensitive to it.
Well, you can get in a really good conversation with somebody, because, you know, it could be somebody, you know, at a store or something like that, and they could be an older person, they could be in their 50s or 60s, and then you could unleash the fact that you're 49 on them, and they can be like, what the hell, and say, yeah, I've taken care of my body for a really long time, and it's not too late for you to start, and you can start lifting and so on.
Well, and the thing about it too is a lot of times what's happened is they've been so programmed by the fitness industry, buying all this shit, they're spending all this money on stuff that doesn't work. I'm like, look, save your money. And I say, you see that section over there? See where all that beef is? Spend your money over there, you're going to be happier, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to get stronger. And they're like, really? But the guy in the GNCs told me this. Well, did he look like me?
Yeah. You know, real quick, I'm probably safe to assume this, but you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like red meat, or I like chicken more, I like whatever. So as far as your red meat's concerned, it seems that it's a majority of beef, or do you also eat a lot? Do you eat quite a bit of fish, chicken? What does that look like?
Great question, brother.
Yeah.
So we spend we have a house in Mexico, and so we spend a lot of time down there as well. And the beef down there totally different.
In a good way?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, keep in mind when you look at their cows, they look sick. And I say, well, I remember literally asking, you know, hey, you know, what's wrong with the cow? No, nothing wrong with the cow. You're just used to seeing the hormone, you know, the overly bloated, and you know, they're just, our cows are just like over the top, you know, hormoned up, you know, and so our beef is almost bland. You know, now you get like every time we have a guest in Mexico, I said, check this out. You take a bite and you're like, it's like music going off in your head. Like, where did all this flavor come from? And so to answer your question, we eat more chicken and more fish when we're in the U.S. We eat beef just about solely down there. So I'm egg whites and beef down there. Up here, we you know, we have to kind of spread it out a little bit. A lot of ground turkey up here. But yeah, so that being said, I mean, if I had that beef in Mexico all the time,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
you do some weird stuff with the meat as you get closer to like a bodybuilding show. I remember you kind of telling me that you do like a percentage of like ground beef, and then you do a percentage of like turkey, and then you start eating more turkey, and then you start mixing in like egg whites, because I think what you're doing over time is you're reducing calories by just having leaner and leaner sources.
100%. Right? Yeah, 100%.
You have like such unusual styles, but I think, you know, when you get into it with bodybuilding and bodybuilders, like they do weird shit with their food towards the end because you just don't care anymore.
But
right?
I mean, but here's the thing, you know, and it can be said of all of us, right? According to the masses, we all do weird shit.
Yeah.
And we all do weird shit in our own way. And that's part of the fun of this whole adventure, is that what weird shit works the best for us, you know? And when you really become intrigued by how it all works, why would you ever want to stop trying new things? You know, and that's, for me, that's it. I mean, I love trying new stuff on myself. Once I get it down, that's kind of when I bring it forth to the people that I'm coaching. If they're interested in building muscle, getting stronger, or even, God, I got plenty of experience keeping myself lean too. But the bottom line is, it's just constantly changes. And I'm not the guy that's reading all of the current studies. I'm the guy that's testing the shit of myself.
Are you going to compete anytime soon?
Yeah, we're supposed to compete. Actually, the lady and I are supposed to compete at the end of the year. Yeah, it's going to be, here's the hiccup, is that to do a bodybuilding show, it's a 4-month prep. Even if you're in good shape, you just need that rhythm. And for sure, even if you start in good shape, that last 3 months, you got to be really locked in, meaning every day is kind of Groundhog Day. Every day is kind of the same, you know? And I like that. It feels good to me. I'm very rhythmic. But there's a lot of shit going on in our life right now. Like we just basically bought a new place out in the desert in Southern California. You know, we're having a big pool put in. There's a guest house being built. So there's all this stuff that's going on. And there's just, it takes that rhythm and breaks it up. And so the goal is to be able to get some of this shit settled down to where we can dig into a good prep. Because the bottom line is, if you don't do the work and you don't do it right, you don't have the look. So it's kind of simple. It's just like, you know, in powerlifting or strongman, if you don't do the peak just right. It's, you know, I mean, it's great you did it in the gym, but you didn't do it when it counted.
You really do have to kind of calculate the rest of your life around it.
100%.
You might say, oh, I have a vacation there.
No.
That's probably not a good spot for that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, you could do it, but you're also could not bring in your best look. So if you really want to do it right, you got to really kind of carve out that section of your life. So the bottom line is that we would have to be hitting the ground running right at the 1st of August. So we've got a lot of shit that's hopefully going to tie up just in time.
No more peanut butter cups and cookies, fat boy.
But you know, I'll tell you though, have you ever tried those? What is the peanut butter cup you just got me? That
Unreal one?
The new ones, yeah.
it was It was Quest.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
those are
don't
good,
when
yeah.
you don't eat a real peanut butter cup for decades, and then you get one of these, call it fake. Come on.
So it's a
That's-
Quest peanut butter cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
I would not have known the difference. That son of a bitch was, I mean, it almost made me drive to the gas station again. Not because I was freaking out over sugar, but it was just so damn good.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit. See, the difference is now the nearest gas station is like 10 miles away. So it's a lot easier not to get in the car and go get something you're not supposed to.
There's a lot of food that's like that nowadays. Pretty cool.
Yeah. No, when
you
it
other
comes to when it comes to, you know, pleasing your taste buds, you can really do it without, you know, keeping sugar out of the equation now. It's pretty cool.
You know what Legendary Foods is? Have you ever heard of the brand?
I have heard of that.
They have these Pop-Tarts, man.
Are they sugar free?
We have some here.
Free.
You're
I don't know
shitting
if we
me.
have any left.
I don't know if we have any left.
Oh,
They're
come
fucking
on. The
good.
little fat boy in me is like playing the violin right now. You know?
They're- bruh, Legendary Foods they have so
so
many
good.
different flavors. There's red velvet, there's birthday cake, there's
The,
brown
the
sugar.
cookies and cream one's really,
cookies
really
Oh,
good.
now you're talking my language,
Yeah,
brother.
'cause
Warm them
it's-
up just a little bit.
Oh, yes.
20 grams of protein, 170 calories.
It's
23
insane.
grams of protein.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
insane. But I was gonna ask you, how do you handle like the PB Fit, so the peanut butter powder? Like, how do you not overdo that? Because I will find myself wanting to just like, it's 20 grams, 26 grams. You know, I'm already at 30. I might as well just keep going.
Well, here's the thing is that from a guy that overdoes everything, that was a challenge. But what I realize is that, you know, when it comes to flavors, I'm trying to have multiple flavors. I'm not just trying to taste the peanut butter powder. So I realized when I put too much, it kills the other ones.
Yeah.
And it took me a little while to figure that out because I was going, when that stuff got released, like it was like
This is
2000.
a real fat guy talking. Like,
Oh,
you're so
yeah.
particular with your taste buds.
Oh
I love
yeah,
it.
no. The Terry calls me. I eat like a pregnant woman. You know? No, I eat like a fat little boy. That's what I eat like. But now, the really pungent taste is what kind of makes that. That's what I'm after because that really strong taste kind of just makes him shut up. You know.
Some PB Fit, Andrew, and some salt.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
It's,
so I mean, salt is a game changer in your diet. Period. You need salt. I mean, if people think salt is bad, I salt every meal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and especially with the water I drink. I mean, my water will carry a lot of minerals out of you. But salt is the sweet salt. That's where the money is, baby. A little bit of Splenda, a little bit of salt.
So good.
Hell, I could just put that on a damn plate and finger it in. You know?
Yeah. I'll make so I'll just use egg whites with the PB Fit.
Yeah.
I'll throw some salt on there and then some sugar-free syrup, and I'll
Yeah.
just have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's
I'm
fucking
telling you,
great.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, even if you're doing like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a real one, and I've done it plenty of times, you get so much fucking peanut butter on it, you pick it up and it's falling out. You know, there can even be too much peanut butter, which is hard to say. But when you're talking to a guy, well,
hard
when
to
you're
get
spilling it all over yourself and you can't even get it, and it's like,
If it doesn't
you know
get
what I mean?
all over the place,
You need a
it
good
doesn't
ratio.
belong in your face.
All right, because you two are nerding out with this, and I really want to know for people that have like a really bad sweet tooth, like yourself, right? And you can't necessarily just go and eat a bunch of Ben and Jerry's. It's not going to be good for the diet. You've mentioned Splenda. What are some things that people can add in now so that they can deal with that sweet tooth, but they're also not falling off the diet? What are your suggestions?
well, so the first thing with managing your sweet tooth is this. Of course, those flavors are key. But what you have to do is you've got to keep your blood sugar stable. If your blood sugar's down, the sugar-free stuff is not going to cure your problem because at that point it's not a flavor. You're talking about putting off an alarm it's that your brain is sending out. If your blood sugar is too low or too high, it can kill you. So your body sends out signals. It wants to be right in the middle. So if your blood sugar is stable, it's not really a craving like it's killing you, right? It's like, boy, I'd really like something sweet. Sometimes if you don't get to it, sucks, but you can manage that. But if your blood sugar's down, there's no sugar-free thing that's going to make that go away. So let that be the first thing to understand. Once your blood sugar's stable, then you can use, peanut butter powder. Obviously, another thing I do is I'll use like sugar-free cocoa powder, put Splenda in there. Make another really killer My wife does it. I'll see if I screw this up. It's basically like a tapioca pudding. All right, so get your pencil and paper. I'm going to put this recipe on the table here. So you need a big mixing bowl, a family-sized tub of Greek yogurt, low fat or fat-free, a can of coconut cream, correct me if I'm wrong, a cup of egg whites, and then you need like a half or a quarter cup of chia seeds, somewhere right in there. Okay, so you put the chia seeds in the bowl. You put the egg whites in there, right? Let it sit. The chia seeds will expand, right? Whatever that takes, 30 minutes, something like that. Then you take the coconut cream, can of coconut cream, put that in there, stir it really well. You got to stir it hard because it'll actually it'll really get smooth, okay? Then you can put Splenda, you can put whatever else you want in there to sweeten it, right? Then you're going to dump your your family tub of Greek yogurt, put in there, mix it again. Now you're to the point where you can kind of taste you can get your flavor nailed down. I'll put peanut butter powder. I'll put more Splenda, possibly sugar-free syrups of different types. Okay. Once the flavor's nailed, it's still going to be a little loose. Put it in the fridge. Come back the next day. It's like kind of like a nice tapioca pudding, and the chia seeds give it that texture. Now, it's basically, it's a good fat. And it tastes killer. Now, the best part is, and I use this for people that need that sweet thing at night, the chia seeds will go down in your stomach, and it basically helps with the digestive tract. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a double positive. So that's a killer one right there. Wow. Yeah.
Give you a nice
That
gut.
sounds great.
Give you some nice full belly at the end of the night.
And the thing about it is, a cup of that stuff, it can go a long way. I mean, you take a cup of that, put it in a bowl, put something else on top that you like put almonds or something on there, something to get the crunch. I'll usually put like some sort of an additional, I'll mix some more peanut butter powder, some more syrup, some more of this. And so I've got like something I'll put on top of it. But you really, at that point, you've got some, it's being creative with your taste buds at that point.
One thing I like about stuff like this is that I know some people don't think they have time for stuff, but I like that it takes up time because I like that it can be part of a hobby. And now you're creating a healthier hobby. Like before you were going out of your way to drive to your favorite restaurant or go to your fast food or your favorite convenience store or whatever it was. And you had these practices that weren't great. Now you completely shifted. And not only are you taking up time, but you're also filling yourself up with something that's healthy. And kind of rewarding, and so I think it's great. I've seen a lot of people make that shift, and and then they make that shift so much that they are like super meticulous with always carrying around their meals and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, because really, what it happens a lot is that once they get put in a position where they start to, if you think about say a better way to put it, we all do things every day to feel good. Yeah. Happy, whatever your definition is. Sometimes people drink an energy drink because they want more energy. So all of these little things that you do, right? They're all designed to help you feel better, have a better life. Well, if you just kind of get rid of some of these things, energy drinks and all the energy you're putting into the wrong spot, you put it into the right spot, which is proper nutrition. It gives you so much more. And once people realize, oh my God, I can feel like this, and all I have to do is that, the trade there's no way you wouldn't make the trade. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that I really want people to understand is that proper nutrition can fix all of these things. I mean, you get people off high blood pressure medicine, off depression medicine. They have more energy, they sleep better. So all of the shit that they're doing, all the energy they're wasting can be fixed. Yeah, just with the basics.
Do you fish?
When I was a little fat boy, I used to fish.
You don't fish anymore. Do you hunt?
No, I do want to fish again because the place where we just moved, the lake has got a lot of catfish in it.
Do you play tennis?
No.
Do you play golf?
Occasionally.
You play cards?
Occasionally.
A lot of us, I think, we push off a lot of other hobbies. And then when somebody asks you hey, do you have a hobby? We're like, we just lift.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing.
It's not just the lifting. It's like there's a whole lifestyle behind it. I think we kind of undersell it. We're like, oh yeah, I just kind of lift. But it's not just the lifting. It's the lifting. It's the community. it's the at-home prep of you guys preparing. Like every day is consumed by this. I mean, you're a professional at it, but it's a hobby, you know. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, I don't understand. Like, how do you have fun? And you're like, no, I'm having fun every day.
Totally,
Like,
exactly,
just relax.
Exactly. And you think of it like this. This is the thing that I always kind of explain to people is that if money didn't exist tomorrow, how different would your life be? Well, I would still be doing a majority of what I'm doing. And that's a really helpful way to understand it. Like, to the point of what you're saying, Mark, you know, even if I didn't make a living do what I do, I would still be doing it. I enjoy it. Would I rather lift weights or you know, do something that's, you know, in the realm of lifting weights rather than go fishing? I'd like to fish after I'm done, but I would always choose to lift weights before go fishing because it's just my totem pole. You know, so you know, it's you know, fishing would be more work for me, you know, than training.
You know, earlier in the conversation, I forgot how the throwing up. We landed on you mentioned how you took an Ambien that night, right? Now I was curious, like, what are the practices that you take to make sure that you always get good sleep at night? Because some people like have really big problems sleeping, and sleeping is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. 100%. And people that know what they're talking about will say, look, if you didn't get good rest, if you're too tired, don't go to the gym. It doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, you know, if you don't go to the gym, bust your ass if you're not eating properly. You're getting your priorities out of line. So sleeping is one of those things that it's hard for people. So it's the discipline. I'm usually in bed at 8 o'clock.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now I get up early because in a perfect world, I wake up just for my alarm, which is most cases, because I go to bed at 8. Now, there's a discipline in that. A lot of times, do I want to stay up? Yes. Do I? Most cases, not. If I do stay up, it's because I've kind of tried to plan it where the next day is going to be allowed where I can kind of catch up. But sleep is one of those things, there's a discipline to it. You got to be disciplined with the things that are hard for you. You know, a lot of people have a hard time with their diets. A lot of people have a hard time with their exercise. Well, sleep is the same thing.
Yeah.
And people, I'm just going to sleep in tomorrow. Well, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, because once you get programmed, in many cases, even if I go to bed late, I'm still going to wake up at the time I wake up. So it's not about allowing yourself to sleep longer. Because the times where I'll have the time where I say, I'm going to try to sleep. I get an extra 30 minutes or something. Yeah. So the key is go to bed earlier. And even if you're not falling asleep, you're off your feet, you're resting, and you're working towards creating that pattern. So a lot of times people don't recognize that going to bed on time, even if it doesn't work right away, the investment of your effort is building a pattern that your body will eventually grab a hold of.
Yeah. I think a big key thing that you mentioned is like you try to go to sleep every day at 8 o'clock. It's because like your body will have itself set up with a circadian rhythm. And even if you were to sleep at 11, you still have the tendency to open your eyes at whatever that time is. And then when you try to get that little extra sleep, it's usually not quality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you can't be going to sleep at 8 one day, 11 one day, 10 one day, 11 one day. It doesn't work.
100%. And another thing too, I think that people drastically overlook is that you sometimes can feel when, like in the day, like if you can fall asleep, if your body naturally wants to go down and you can allow that, those 30-minute naps are powerful. We're talking about supercharged shit. You wake up and like, whew, come on, let's go, baby. You know, and a lot of times you don't wake up from a full night's rest feeling that way, you know, because for whatever reason, your body said, hey, let's go down right now. And it's on point to max. It's optimizing that 30 minutes of sleep, man. You know?
How do you think you were able to develop such a big back? You have an enormous back and you got a small waist. That's what.
No, you know, the funny part is that I still look at my waist and think that it's chunky. And, you know, obviously I give myself credit for the big back, but I still look at my waist and think the ratio is all fucked up. So the back is a monstrous slab of meat. And just like anything else that's big, so to speak, or you know, there's time. I mean, I've been training for a long time, but then at the same time, the different types of training that I've done has been a huge part of it. In the first part of my training, I didn't really deadlift much. And then when I started getting into the strength world, I was, holy shit, I better catch up here because, you know, if you're not deadlifting is a part of strength athletics, whether you like it or not. You know, you can try to deny it, but all you're doing is leaving yourself behind, you know? So I started deadlifting. And how? The normal crazy shit that I've always done with squats. You know, I believe I still have it's an amateur record. I only spent a couple of contests as an amateur in strongman. So just thinking about this hurts. 60 seconds, 500 pounds, 21 reps. So
Squats? Or deadlifts?
Deadlifts. Yeah. So I could actually squat that and do it faster because it's you know, the movement's a little bit more, you know, deadlift, you're waiting for a down signal and up signal. So you're kind of at the mercy of the judge, you know, but so ultimately really where I had a big wide back from doing all the pull-ups because I was a big pull-up guy, pull-down guy. Mm-hmm. When I came to strongman, I was, holy shit, I better pick up the slack on picking shit up off the floor. So I started, you know, I again got a little bit of technique training. So I knew, you know, kind of where I was really supposed to be focusing my efforts and then just got and started nailing it. So I mean, in strongman, you see max deadlifts, you know, more now, but when I was in, it was always, okay, how many times can you do 700 pounds? Wow. How many times can you do 500 pounds? How many times can you do 650? And so you hook up and you go. And there is no better, you know, there's nothing better to make a back dense than time under a load doing a deadlift. Because I mean, the bottom line is if you're suspending that weight, there's something that's working, you know? And so deadlifting has been a huge piece of it. Pull-ups is another huge piece of it. But I think that's really what it comes down to is all of my growth patterns were put together with this, you know, how many times can I do this weight? Any major progress that I've made with a growth pattern, you know, or strength or just putting on good tissue has been that format. So I would have to give it to, you know, all of the deadlift training leading up to and during my strongman career. Because then when I went to wrestle, I stopped deadlifting altogether. Actually, for a period of time, I even stopped squatting because, you know, you can't have sore legs and go bounce around the ring, man, you know? So then, you know, going back to deadlifting when I came into bodybuilding was killer because now I'm deadlifting with the idea of keeping the muscle engaged, not just how many times can I rip this son of a bitch off the floor. Yeah. And so it's all of these different dimensions that I've been doing, you know, through my career that's kind of shaped some of these spots, if you will.
You know, I think it's funny because I would agree. I think for myself, like the deadlift was a big thing that helped with my back. Like I noticed like after I started focusing on strength first off and then deadlifting, like my back just got thicker and wider. And when you tell people that, they're like, but the deadlift doesn't contract the back as well as pull downs do. But I'm just like, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, but here again, I mean, you could create an argument for the fact that it doesn't contract the back as well. Yeah. But you can contract the bicep. But when you contract the bicep when it's attached to an 80-pound dumbbell, there's going to be more damage done to that. Even if you don't quite contract it as well at the top, you're going to get more growth moving that weight around. Now, the key to that is obviously to be able to do that without damaging yourself. So there's two sides of the equation. So, you know, doesn't contract the back as well, okay, but that doesn't mean that it's going to build more tissue. Yeah. You know?
What was the hardest thing transitioning from strongman and wrestling into bodybuilding?
You know what honestly what it was food, because I had spent all of these years defining my methodology with eating and never being hungry as a huge piece of that equation. Well, son of a bitch, all of a sudden now I have to start managing my sugar addiction, I'm a foodie, being hungry. Oh, fuck. Talk about Jesus Christ. I'm 40. I didn't make the switch till I was 42. 42 years old. I'm like, every time I look in the mirror, I see the fat boy, you know, because it's like that, you know, that thing that, you know, when you're hungry, your blood sugar is starting to go down. I'm getting these, I need sugar. And I'm like, I feel like I'm fucking 15 again, you know? So there was a certain point, to be totally honest, where I was honestly thinking, man, you know, I know what I'm doing and I'm going to get my job done, but I questioned my longevity as a bodybuilder because I thought, you know, this is great. I mean, I came into bodybuilding and did really well really quick, and that was great. But then I thought, okay, I'm not going to destroy my life over being an older age fucking bodybuilder. You know, I mean, I was, you know, I'm 42. By the time I'm 45, you know, well, actually, I came in real quick, turned pro, did a pro contest, placed well. So, I mean, I had a big splash. And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, now I know what I need to do to get better as a bodybuilder. And it was kind of that crossroad, you know, where I'm kind of thinking, okay, this is what I got to do. And then I realized, okay, then I'm going to have to diet again. So I had to really kind of had to come I really had to do some soul searching. And I thought what really came down to was, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're questioning yourself, and this is good. But just like everything else you've done, those question marks is what drives you. Yeah. If you walk away from this, you never really beat it. Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of cool. It kind of put me back in that position where I was kind of redefining myself in terms of understanding my discipline with what I had developed my whole life with my methodology. So it was pretty intense, and it really helped me be a better version of me. You know? Do
you have any current injuries or anything that prevent you from doing certain? I know you've had like surgeries and things like that.
No, I mean, I'm pretty banged up. I'll be totally honest. You know, I mean, like, I can still go hard and I can still lift heavy weights, but I have to cycle it now. Meaning, I can go, you know, I can lift. And when I say cycle it, sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3. But what happens is I start to notice that my joints are just having a hard time. Mm. And so, I mean, I can get myself, it's like an active recovery. I mean, I still train. I mean, I love to train. You know, if anything, the discipline now for me is taking the time off because it's harder to recover.
Maybe nowadays you might use more machines and do things a little differently.
So in that phase where I'm kicking ass and I'm going hard that couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing shit that I won't do until I come back there. So you're hitting it around the head, brother. I'll be doing the heavy dumbbells, the bars, all the stuff that I want to do. I love this, the roots of me. And then once I start to realize, I'm having a hard time, I back off and I don't do that stuff. Sometimes it's, 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3. If we travel enough that I have like 3 or 4 day gap without training, it's actually really helpful. It drives me nuts. But I go back in the gym, I'm like, oh, come on, I feel good,
Are you aware of how much noise you make when you lift?
Probably not.
I remember seeing videos like with you like taking weight off the rack, like 150-pound dumbbells or 200-pound dumbbells, and you're doing some like incline dumbbell presses with it or something, and you pick them up and you're like, and you're making all these like kind of old man noises, all that kind of stuff, and then you hike them up and you keep making this like almost like farting noise with your mouth. I'm like, is he even aware that he does this, or is he just like an animal?
I'll tell you. So I make a lot of fucking noise,
like spitting everywhere. I'm like, this guy's a savage.
I make a lot of noise. I make a lot of smell. I mean, smell. No, I mean, going back to this will summarize the whole thing. So Terry and I meet, and probably within the first 24 hours, I said, look, let's just get this ABC of me out of the way. I said, look, I smell, I fart a lot, I burp a lot, I make a lot of weird fucking sounds, and you're probably going to end up doing a lot of shit for the first time when you're with me. But if you're good with that, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. But I'm in. Sign me up.
But I don't think she realized how many, because what you're talking about training, I just, the crazy part is I fucking make noise everywhere. I think because it's just some people are very conscious of the sounds they make. I've never been that way.
It's always making
even when noise. I'm taking a dump, I'd be by myself. I mean, I was in she was at the store. I'm taking this dump. I'm like, oh, come on, daddy.
Coaching yourself through it.
Well, it's just the noise is almost, you know what it is? It's like the noise. Think of it like this. The noise that you're hearing is what's coming out, you know? And I don't mean coming out of my ass. I'm talking about, you know, I'm lifting heavy weights.
Soothing to you.
Yeah, it's kind of what I'm hearing on the inside is what I'm letting go on the outside, you know? But, you know, I will say that when I was young, being real vocal with my training actually, for some weird way, actually was very helpful to me. You know, like it helped, you know, when you're getting fired up, you know, when I would get fired up, but then during the lift, I remember especially like a first heavy lift, I mean, I would get to the bottom, it would just explode. You know, it's just that it feels good.
You get an opportunity to be somebody else for a couple seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You know what I mean? And think about it. You can yell as loud as you want. You can let as much aggression go as you want. There's no problem. You know,
I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
A few times during the conversation, you mentioned like when you look in the mirror, sometimes you see the young fat kid, right?
Yeah.
Now, at this point in your life, do you look at that as something that is a positive thing that forces you to continue to stay in shape, or do you think that there's somewhat of like a problem there?
That's a good question, brother. A lot of times, I mean, when you ask that question, I'm just like literally just thinking out loud right now. I mean, you could split that either way if you want to create an argument. But when you ask that of me, I really, when it comes down to it, I don't really think of it as good or bad. You know, I think of it that this is what it is, and I found a way to harness it, you know, because a lot of times, you know, people will have something in their life that plagues them, and it remains a plague. And I think one of the biggest things that people tend to miss in their lives is sometimes the things that are the hardest and hurt the most are the biggest blessings. And, you know, why that's part of my story, why that's part of what's in my head, I don't know. Is it bad? You could call it good, you could call it bad, but good or bad, I'm going to harness it for a way to better myself. And that's kind of what I look at. I don't look at it, is this good or bad? I look at, okay, well, this is creating an opportunity. Where is it? How do I use it? How do I better myself? You know, and as I get older, it's been so helpful because those challenges, I've learned to deal with them. And then I can help others go through their challenges. You know, like I have a guy that I'm coaching right now, just use his first name, his name's Doug. He came to me, he was going through a divorce. He was severely overweight, blood pressure medicine, depressant medicine. I mean, he was pretty messed up. He was really having a hard time. And so we did this program, and he physically and mentally has gone, physically pretty much crushed his journey, but mentally he still wasn't quite there. and for myself, I understand that because it's a rhythm that you create, and that rhythm becomes normal enough that it's a battle that you know you can win. And so that's what I tell them all the time. Look, and what basically the program is over. I said, look, yes, the program's over. You've already paid me, but we're going to go. I'm going to continue to work with you until this daily battle is like a normal thing. Because the challenges that we all face daily, you know, it's like life is a war, and you have to win your daily battle to even have a chance to win the war. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I think that, you know, for me, you know, I have a daily battle for myself. I mean, I'll be the first one to say, man, I'm fucked up. You know, we're all fucked up, you know? I mean, I deal with, you know, even in my head, you know, I often have a hard time focusing. You know, my train of thought will be all over the place. And all these things that are challenges, these are the things that I grab a hold of that actually drive me to move forward and be better, because the things that are difficult, the things that you overcome, they're the most rewarding. And so I guess what I'm saying is to answer your question, is I've taken my daily battles and I've learned to kind of manage them. And it's really been very helpful for me to help people like Doug manage his daily battles. I mean, he's just like, my life has changed. And I said, now let's just make sure you keep it that way, you know? So I guess to answer the question, good, bad, or the otherwise, does it really matter? How do you use it?
I really like how you put that, because a lot of people talk about like bodybuilders, right? People like to say, oh, like some people like bodybuilders, if they look at their physique and they're like, I'm fat, somebody else that's like normal would look at them and be like, there's no fucking way you're fat. You're not fat at all, right? But no, seriously. But then like that, like people will look at that and say, oh, that's because that bodybuilder has body dysmorphia or whatever. And technically, who knows? They might. But sometimes it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Is it pushing them towards a place of being healthier? If it is, then is that a problem?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's the whole thing. Well, the thing that kills me is everybody's got problems.
Yeah.
If you really want to break it down, we're all fucked up somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm.
So why we want to point out other people's flaws and make that some sort of a practice is what? Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Call me what you will. Body dysmorphia. Call me fucking whatever. Doesn't make a difference because I'm doing what I'm doing the best of my ability. I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Yep.
And so, you know, the whole idea of titling somebody, I mean, let somebody title themselves, you know? So there's not enough positivity pumped out of people into the universe. You know, take the thing like this. It's like a boomerang. You throw a turd into the boomerang, it's going to come back and pop you in the side of the face when you least expect it. Yeah. So my thing is I got to pump as much positivity into the universe, which really is through other people.
Yeah.
And that's where the positivity, it just swirls around you. And next thing you know, life becomes a much better place because one of the biggest challenges is to not accept negativity. You know, someone walk up on the street. I tell my daughters all the time, look, somebody could walk up on the street and say all sorts of terrible things to me. You know, maybe walk up and say, hey, you're a dickhead. I might be. I'm not throwing a turd back at you. Mm-hmm. Now I'm no better than you are. And better is really not the better term. It's just, I don't want to do that. You know? You know, when someone, you know, in social media, it's great. You know, guys will come in and they're just throwing daggers. It's just eating me up, you know, and I'll just come back and I'll say, hey, sometimes I'll say it to it publicly, like if it's a comment. I'll say, look, I'll be your punching bag if it makes you feel better. I'm good. Punch away. And then they'll come back and say something else, and I'll say, look, I'm going to help you whether you realize it or not, you know. But in the DMs or it's private or a messenger or something like that, they'll just throw some terrible thing, and I'll say, hey, you know, I'm good. How are you today? And they're like, I'm good. It's sometimes people, they're more comfortable dishing off negativity for some reason.
Yeah.
Why? Who cares? Just help people realize it doesn't have to be that way. You know?
Yeah.
I agree. Andrew, want to take us on out of here, buddy?
I will. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Thank you to everybody on the live chat. We had over 100 people the entire time. It was fantastic. Yeah, so I love the conversations that were happening in the chat. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. Huge shout out and thank you to Eat Right Foods for sponsoring today's episode. Again, that's eatrite.foods.com. Links down in the YouTube description as well as the podcast show notes. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z and the Andrew Z on TikTok. And Nsima, where you at?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube. At Nsima Yin Yang on TikTok and Twitter. John, where can people find all your stuff?
The best way to get in contact with me, and on that level, I like to say that when people come and want to chat with me, I'm very, very active in my Instagram direct message. So at the Jon Andersen. Obviously, my name's spelled a little funky, so you have to manage that one. Jon and Andersen. I'm Nordic, so it's Andersen. So at the Jon Andersen. Come in, say hi, let's shoot the shit, have some fun.
We got to get John out of here because he's got to eat, he's got to poop, he's got to pee. It's like having a baby in the office here today.
The question I got is, just in case, do you have a shower in that bathroom?
We don't.
Oh, okay. You got some wet wipes?
We got baby wipes.
Okay. Now the question is it a value pack?
Yeah, we got plenty.
We're covered.
Yeah,
and my wife's here, so I'm good. She can help me. She can clean up.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.